You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Hurricane Zeta is to make landfall on the coast of Louisiana later this afternoon, and it is intensifying significantly as it approaches the coast. Currently 110 miles per hour from the National Hurricane Center at their latest advisory, which is just moments ago. They are running hourly advisories on the storm, and they just put out their 3 p.m. advisory saying that, again, it's stronger, 110 miles per hour, pressure 972 millibars, and it's at 28.7 north, 90.8 degrees west. That's data from the Hurricane Hunters with higher gusts. A wind gusts of 48 miles per hour was recently reported at Houma, Louisiana, and a wind gust of 46 was reported at New Orleans Lakefront Airport. We'll be covering this storm until it makes landfall this afternoon and evening, and probably beyond that as well, because it's threatening significant populations, and we'll be here to see how that transpires and take your questions live on the air. Additionally, elsewhere in the wide world of tropics, we've got Tropical Storm Goni, which has just formed in the Western Pacific. That will be a threat for the Philippines this weekend. But the main feature, obviously, is Hurricane Zeta, and you can see it there in visible imagery and in our little inset there on the infrared. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined by many people tonight, consisting of Amy, Ethan, Isaac, Sam, Jacob, Kay, Nelson, Ryan, and Strat. Good evening to you all. This storm is a significant threat to land, and let's start with Ethan, shall we, if you would like, because you're showing us the latest radar on this.
Yeah, as you can see, Zeta's eye, at least on radar, doesn't appear to have a fully circular appearance. It's got more of an oval shape to it, I'd say. But you've got these outer bands here that are beginning to push onshore. And what I'm really looking forward to not seeing, I guess I could say, in regards to Zeta, is in these outer bands, because this is the northeast side of the storm. And one of the things in the northeast side of the storm that people don't often look at is tornadoes, and that's the most tornado-prone section of a tropical cyclone, and that's on land right now. So I fully expect to see a few tornado warnings over the next few hours. There is a tornado watch in parts of Louisiana and Mississippi that does go throughout tonight. We've already had one tornado warning already for Louisiana, near New Orleans already issued.
And Nelson, you're, well, actually Nelson was just taking a minute out, but he's on the ground in New Orleans, and we'll hopefully hear from him fairly soon. We've also got Isaac with us, showing us some webcam imagery. Where are we tonight, or today?
This is in Grand Isle, Louisiana, which is roughly near maybe around where the hurricane may make landfall here, and this is the current view again towards the coast from Grand Isle, Louisiana. You can see the waves there picking up, and as well you might be able to note a little bit the wind's also picking up too. A really dangerous situation here, and I really hope everybody is taking this hurricane seriously here and taking shelter and just staying safe in general with this hurricane. Nathan?
Yep, and the storm threat continues to rise more than what you would normally have expected from the start of today to the later part of today. The storm has intensified substantially. I wonder if, Kay, you might want to talk a little bit about how it's managed to do that.
Well, it's certainly unusual given that these water temperatures are around 26 Celsius at this time and dropping still. It seems that due to how late in the season it is, there are colder temperatures aloft that are making the environment more favourable than you would expect, say, in August or September. But there's certainly baroclinic forcing going on here to assist in its strengthening.
That's interesting. and speeding up as well as it gets closer to land. Looking at it right now, actually let's just get a very quick estimate here on the storm's location. The center of the storm appears to be now 27 miles off the coast of Louisiana. So that's got, I mean, an hour ago we were watching it very closely. I think it was 63 miles. So you could be looking at landfall at the end of the hour if it keeps going like that. Strat, you're also here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we're all watching this very closely right now with the strongest landfall of the year for this part of Louisiana. We've only had tropical storms make landfall in the eastern half of the south coast of Louisiana to date. So this is the first time the New Orleans metro region is getting direct hurricane conditions this season, despite Delta and Laura, of course, making powerful landfalls in western Louisiana. You know, unfortunately, what we've seen is a significant difference from the expectations from a couple days ago. We were initially expecting, and the consensus expectation was that wind shear would be much more dramatically halting intensification of the system through its track of the Gulf of Mexico. That by the time it entered Wednesday, conditions would either inhibit any further strengthening or begin to weaken it. But what we've seen instead is the fast movement speed along with baroclinic forcing and really a lack of shear over the core of the system, despite some of its presence further up to the north, allow the storm to rapidly intensify today.
Here you can see our dashboard, I guess you could call it. We've got everything on our screen here. The visible imagery over today, the sandwich imagery, it's the one in the middle there, and the same too on the top right hand side. That's one of our other screens here, and I can point at it if necessary. The web cameras we've been watching recently, and down the bottom there the latest radar as well. If you've got any questions for us whilst we're on the air, we'll do our best to take them and answer them. Can't guarantee that given the nature of the situation and how busy things are getting. But just one that I've just seen just there. Do you think that southeast Mississippi will receive hurricane force winds?
Yes.
Yes.
Certainly likely to have at least gusts to that strength. And if this goes east of the mean, we could see hurricane conditions there.
Just because of the forward speed of the storm, you know, it's moving right now at least 20 miles an hour. The last hour alone, it's moved, you know, substantially faster than that. It's almost certainly going to be delivering hurricane conditions to parts of southwestern Mississippi. There's a reason a hurricane warning's in place there right now. And on top of that, tropical storm warnings extend all the way inland right now into Georgia, and I'm not sure if they've been extended further north yet. You can't really see it on just the National Hurricane Center's forecast graphic, but if you open up the weather.gov graphic, you can see those inland tropical storm warnings going very far inland, in part to the very quick forward speed of the storm.
We've got a ton of questions that came in. A lot of the subject matter is whether this storm will reach Category 3 status. That's probably the question that most people have right now, and it's somewhat of a shame that people really focus in on the category number, considering that this storm right now is just 1 mile an hour short of Category 3. You're in that grey area really, but you have to delineate it somehow. It's a high-end Category 2, but do we think, just for the record, that it might get to Category 3 status?
It's still possible, certainly. It hasn't shown signs that the pressure's stopped falling, and as long as the pressure's dropping, the winds will keep rising.
Yeah, so what have Recon been looking at for, and what have they found recently?
Well, the latest drop sond was 972. The Recon is currently moving through the south side of the storm to make a pass from either the south or the southeast. I'm hoping they'll be able to sample the eastern eye wall before landfall, which is where the strongest winds were last time. And the reason that the upgrade to 110 has happened is because we had a drop sond, which, when the data was interpreted to account for the nature of the drop sond, gave 95 knots. But with such strong winds at higher altitudes, we've seen 120 knot winds or 140 miles an hour on radar and at flight level with the plane. Certainly got the potential for those winds to get to the surface.
See if we can get some more questions here. Do you think there'll be tropical storm force winds all the way through its land path? Certainly an interesting question. We think there'll be tropical storm winds. Well, looking back at the graphic there from the National Hurricane Center, they have a chance actually that it could do just that, but the higher chances extend pretty much up to northern Georgia and just about into North Carolina.
Yeah, the reason that they don't have inland tropical storm warnings all the way out to the coast is because it is expected to turn post-tropical before it gets back to the Atlantic Ocean, because it is going to be interacting with this trough that's picking up and making it move so quickly even more. But, to reiterate the early point, this storm is making landfall very shortly in southeastern Louisiana. There are tropical storm warnings in association with this all the way up into not just the tip of North Carolina, but well into the actual state. And flood advisories and watches going all the way up to New Jersey in association with this. So this is a significant land threat, not just for where it's coming onshore right now, but for much of the Appalachian region, the southeast, and even into the mid-Atlantic.
So this storm is getting very close, and it could, pass within miles of New Orleans itself. What are we expecting there?
Conditions, very strong winds.
What's that?
Very hurricane conditions, very strong winds.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want, an exact outlook, it's going to vary depending on your exact area and the locality. But, regionally, an additional 2 to 4 inches of rain. Fortunately, rain isn't going to be a massive factor just because this thing is moving so quickly, so it's going to clear out of areas pretty quick. But on top of that rainfall, coastal areas a bit west of landfall to the rest of the coast of Louisiana, Mississippi can expect at least 4 feet of storm surge. A good chunk of areas expecting 5 to 7, 5 to 8, or 6 to 9 feet. And of course, those hurricane force winds at or near major hurricane force with major hurricane force gusts as this thing comes on shore, with those damaging winds extending several hundred miles inland.
Some news that I'm just hearing
Okay.
is that the surge heights may be underrepresentative of what could happen, because a buoy just offshore of the mouth of the Mississippi is reporting 50-foot waves.
That sounds rather scary.
So that would be significant overtopping waves above the surge, which would mean that even if the surge only gets to 6 to 9 foot, you could add another 8 foot on top of that potentially for waves, especially in coastal areas.
Samuel's also with us tonight showing this webcam shot. Well, it was. They've changed it to an ad. Wonderful. In any case, he was over there somewhere. What were you showing us, Sam, just there? Is he with us?
Showing downtown Louisiana, downtown New Orleans.
Yeah.
Actually, in the Bourbon Street Mardi Gras area, which is basically right in the heart of New Orleans. This is the area, one of the areas that we're monitoring for a potential impact zone, which could see some of the strongest winds as the storm moves ashore.
Persistent rain there by the looks of it just now.
Correct. Although winds are also it's not overly windy there, but there are a few items moving around from the winds, but nothing too serious yet.
Okay, we're obviously watching out for those potential tornadoes as well. That's something that could materialize in the next few hours, but we're here tracking Zeta up until its landfall, which could be pretty soon at the very fast rate that it's moving. If you were watching at the very beginning of this stream just 15 minutes ago, I think the eye was only just starting to appear on the screen in the inset there. Now it's well on the screen. And just to do a very latest estimate, and I'll keep doing this up until it strikes land, the latest estimate is now that it's about 20 miles offshore. So coming in very quickly, the eye of the storm from New Orleans, it's still 83 miles, but closing in at over 20 miles an hour.
How much distance has the system moved just in the past hour? Because I know that right now they're saying the 6-hour average for movement speed is about 22 miles an hour, but the past hour or two has been substantially quicker than that, if I'm not mistaken.
It's hard for me to get an indication here.
According to Recon fixes, it was doing around 30 miles an hour not that long ago.
Something like that.
The pickup from this trough, and you can sort of see, especially on the visible and infrared, better than the radar, how they've begun to interact more, particularly in the western half in the past several hours. That's really started to kick up its forward speed, particularly in the past couple hours, where this morning is moving at a comparatively more leisurely pace of 15 to 18 miles an hour.
Something to note with this system is that it's decided to do what 2020 does best and break historical precedent.
Oh boy.
There has only been one system in the Gulf of Mexico that has been stronger than this storm later in the year, and that was Kate of 85 that got to 120 miles an hour in mid-November. But that was over the south-central Gulf of Mexico, and it was east of where Zeta is. So for anywhere west of the Mississippi Delta, particularly this close to the coast, is unprecedented to be of this strength.
Well, that makes us feel a lot better. Not really. More questions here then. If it had more time to strengthen, could it have been stronger?
I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, certainly so.
I think the end discussion there, though, to somewhat of a factor comes down to if it was moving slower, it'd be because it wasn't interacting with really the trough in anywhere the same way, and it wouldn't have anywhere near similar baroclinic forcing. The question at that point is if just the sea surface temperatures and conditions alone would have been enough to allow a rare circumstance like this to occur. And I think that's a bit more of a question.
A
If
question.
it was moving a bit slower, it might have been stronger, but if it was moving a lot slower, then not so much.
A question there about whether Zeta would redevelop off the coast of New England, or could a system form in its wake there?
They're talking about when this exits the
Yes.
mid-Atlantic in New England. At that point, it's really going to be merging with a trough, so it's not going to be tropical anymore. And all the models, and that's about 2 days from now at this point. They say its remnant energy is going to merge and then get kicked off in another cold core low that could develop just south and east of Greenland.
What I
in
have
about 3 days
seen
from now.
that will probably happen in its wake over the North Atlantic is there'll be a train of 4 or 5 extratropical cyclones that head on towards Europe, which will bring wonderful conditions here to Force 13 HQ. That's why I keep saying evening every so often, because I forget the time zones. Of course, it's still afternoon over there in the central US. But we're taking questions, and we've got people linked in from all around on our stream tonight. Are the Recon planes going to get to the eastern side of the eye wall in time?
It seems they're heading there now, but it's going to be a close call, and the SFMR data might be contaminated by these incredibly high waves.
And we're now looking at 18 miles from landfall. So changing at every moment here. As you would expect with a storm that's moving this quickly, that would now triangulate a landfall time something like... trying to figure that one out myself. 35 minutes or so.
Mentioned what Kay said earlier, that the 50-foot waves, so that may indicate the surge might be higher than what is indicated, because the surge predictions came when the storm was a category 1 and a bit further out, and because it's ramped up so quickly, the surge may well be a lot higher than is indicated by the National Hurricane Center.
And it is important to note that their surge graphics are still experimental and not 100% reliable. They're only an indication of what's possible at the time of simulations being run.
Yeah.
They're an indication of what can happen at the time simulations run, if it's high tide at landfall, I mean, this is going to end up making landfall about 2 hours earlier than just yesterday's expectations alone. So it's definitely coming on a substantially faster pace, and that could throw off some of the prior calculations a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see if they make any last-minute adjustments at the next full advisory. But I mean, regardless, 5 to 8, 5 to 7, 6 to 9 feet of life surge or of storm surge is life-threatening to people in low-lying areas.
And that full advisory is coming up in 40 minutes' time, so we'll have that news when it comes up. Isaac's going through a few webcams there. You can see the current conditions across the board. Anything interesting that you've spotted so far?
Well, before the Grand Isle webcam went down again, I noticed the surge is starting to increase more. The waves are going over, I'm assuming, the sand dunes ahead of the traffic camera in Grand Isle, Louisiana. This camera you're looking at right now is from Houma, Louisiana, eastern Houma, Louisiana right now. And you get to see the current conditions right now. People out and about, unfortunately, during this hurricane here. Hopefully they're trying to get back to their homes here, but a really dangerous hurricane nonetheless here, and a near major hurricane as well too. Only, 2-3 miles away technically from reaching major hurricane status.
Well,
Kate
yeah.
probably correct me on that.
So that location there is approximately 56 miles from the eye of the storm, would you believe?
And this is in Houma, Louisiana, like I said, eastern Houma, Louisiana.
So that may well be the closest camera that's online right now to the center of the storm.
I could try, let me try Grand Isle again, see if it's gonna, it keeps going off and on here, let's see. Okay,
Yeah.
there, it's back.
Oh.
It's back now.
Now, Grand Isle is about 38 miles from the eye of Zeta right now.
And hopefully you could see, it may be a little hard to, but the waves are getting up a little bit higher than they were originally when I was first showing this webcam here from Grand Isle. And like you said, it's less than 40 miles away from the center of the storm at this point in time. And you can see the current conditions outside on the coast of Grand Isle, Louisiana.
Interesting that, I don't know whether it's just a trick of the camera or what, but it sort of looks a bit bright in one part of the picture there, as if there might be a gap in the clouds. But it doesn't seem on the satellite that the eye is anywhere near just yet.
It could be, but it could also be a trick of the camera, like you said. It could be with the lens. If the lens has a high f-stop aperture, it can tend to do that. So that may be just a trick of the camera you're seeing perhaps there, but easily it could be what you're saying as well too.
And yes, a few people reporting that there is still quite a bit of traffic in some areas that are in the danger zone. Who should we speak to next? Well, I guess I'll open the floor at this point and look out for more questions. But most of the questioning really is about whether it will become a Category 3. That's probably the biggest question before it makes landfall. And then we're talking about the storm moving inland and probably getting even quicker. Look at those waves there, really blowing away with the wind once they crash ashore. What are we with surge? Were we still looking 8 feet?
I think that we can still go with the NHC numbers, but note that there will be significant waves above that surge height, because waves aren't counted into the height of surge or indeed tide. It's the mean point between the top and bottom of the wave. But if you've got a, say, 8-foot surge and then waves on top of that, you could double the height the water reaches, and that would be bringing water into second story, the second floor of homes if the windows break. And with the amount of debris that winds will be putting into the waters, it's entirely possible to see second stories of homes being flooded.
The storm is now 15 miles from the first point of land. That would be East Timbalier Island, and then it would move on towards the northeast, towards Leeville, and then eventually towards the Mississippi. And it looks at this point that it might pass east of New Orleans by, this is just an estimate, maybe about 20 miles if it keeps going like this.
I mean, even so, New Orleans is still going to be getting hurricane conditions from that. Even if it just misses the strongest by the center, passing very marginally to the east, and it gets the western portion of the eye wall when it's passing the latitude New Orleans. They're already, getting into the thick of it right now, and conditions are just going to continue to rapidly deteriorate there over the next several hours. So, anyone from New Orleans watching this should not take that as any sort of message to take any less caution. I know Nelson, who's here on the call from New Orleans, definitely isn't himself.
Yeah, we'll hopefully hear from Nelson fairly soon. He's prepping, would you believe, for the storm. Of course he is. But we'll see if we can grab a word with him at some point during our stream tonight to see how things are going over there. And apart from that, the next closest person that we've got in our call is probably Isaac, actually. You're over there in Texas, halfway along the coast. I don't suppose conditions have taken a turn for the worse over there at your place.
No, it's actually cleared up a lot. You'd expect with a passing hurricane nearby here to be kind of cloudy, overcast weather, but due to this front that's of course affecting the hurricane right now and making it move as fast as it is right now, I have really pretty much mostly clear skies, sunny weather with a temp of about, I believe last I checked it was in the low or mid 60s Fahrenheit. So really nice day outside right now, but across the way over in Louisiana, unfortunately they're getting a hurricane here.
More questions. How much rain could Zeta bring to South Florida? Because we'll be getting soaked for a week straight. The grounds are already saturated and there's still standing water in a lot of places. Doesn't look like
South Florida?
Doesn't look like there'll be any rain from Zeta, but I'm not sure about other systems in the future.
South Florida's just started entering its dry season now. I think that rain's going to dry up.
That sounds like it would be welcome over there.
With regards to rainfall anywhere in the storm, its high forward speed will mean that flooding potential is limited at least until this gets nearer to mountainous areas where the terrain would induce greater rainfall. But for coastal areas, the rain won't add much to the surge.
Here's actually an interesting question about the tornado threat. Does the forward speed of the hurricane affect how many tornadoes are produced, or does it stay the same regardless of forward movement? Would anyone like to answer that one?
Something in this storm that we've noted is that it has very high winds aloft, and as this makes landfall, those winds would weaken slower than the surface winds, especially with a high forward speed. So I think that the winds at the surface are always going to decrease at a constant level, roughly, when it makes landfall. However, the flight level winds would change depending on what other conditions are impacting them, such as the trough, and a higher forward speed would therefore create a greater amount of shear, which would obviously favour tornadoes more.
Yeah.
As of 6 minutes ago, the storm was 15 miles offshore, although you've got the very, very latest imagery on your screen right now. That's right up to, I think it's to the minute, so very recent imagery there. That's probably ahead of any other satellite product that you'll see. So if timeliness is what matters to you, then there it is on the screen right now. Strat?
Someone's asking a question. I think it's going to be important to cover this because I know we're talking a lot of the coastal impacts. They're from the Metro Atlanta region, and they're trying to ask if they're going to get hurricane force gusts. Your answer is a pretty solid no, but it is forecast to be around 45 mile an hour sustained winds as the maximum for Zeta by the time it's passing Georgia into North Carolina. So you could be getting some stronger tropical storm gusts, and that is why, there is the consensus forecast there will be damaging winds with this going far inland, despite it weakening just because of its forward speed. So, we have the hurricane warnings, of course, in Louisiana and Mississippi, but there are tropical storm warnings from this system through more than half of Alabama, across northern Georgia, including the Atlanta metro, and even in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee as well. So damaging wind threat well inland for this system, and its threat won't be gone just because it's inland.
More questions. Did the constant redeveloping of the eye today mean that the cooler temperatures in the north of the Gulf couldn't weaken the storm?
It wouldn't just be that alone, because you can have a storm briefly develop an eye, and cooler sea surface temperatures just wind it down because it doesn't have the ability to throw anything significant up in terms of convection. The issue, or the unfortunate thing that really led to it coming to what we saw today, was that shear really turned out to be a lot less than any of the initial forecasts, because the way that Zeta is interacting with the trough that's picking up and moving it at such a forward speed, the interaction was largely different than anticipated, and still is right now. So you're seeing more of a baroclinic forcing due to a slight change in the angle of the trough, so it's not as detrimental to the system, and has even tried to lend a little bit of energy to it, compared to the prior forecast, which are saying you're not really going to see such action in the Gulf of Mexico. Shear is going to be imparted over it very strongly from the southwest northeastern strip convection away, and cause it to steady out in intensity or weaken.
And if it passes over Lake Pontchartrain, could the storm strengthen?
No.
No. And it's not going to do that in any case, we certainly don't think so.
Once we get to landfall, the window for strengthening will have closed.
Although, realism would have told you that should have ended a few hours ago, and yet it didn't.
Well, I guess it's the first time for everything, but a storm of this strength wouldn't be able to increase its speed over land, especially at this point of the year.
I think something considers the waters, if it emerges over there briefly, won't be even as warm as where they are right now, or just about the same, if not less. You're gaining latitude. Those shelf waters have cooled off substantially. And the second part is that just because of its forward speed, it would have maybe 30 minutes or so to an hour at most. And it would have to try to spend at least a little bit of time beginning to reorganize its core if it wanted to up in speeds. You just wouldn't see something like that.
We do have an update from Recon. They're heading in from the southeast to the eye. I don't think they're going to go to the northwest. I'm hoping that they'll turn towards the east or west, because the northwestern eye wall is very close to land right now.
It is.
So I can't imagine
they
would
will go to the eastern side to sample the strongest winds. It's just a matter of how far from land they'll be when they go.
Just getting up velocity on the radar as well, which you can see in the small window at the bottom there. This detects winds to an extent, but also you can look out for tornadoes on the velocity more than anything else. There's nothing in the direct vicinity of the storm by the looks of things, although generally tornado threats don't really happen near the center of the storm. They're usually in the outer bands. However, looking at the velocity, showing quite clearly where the eye is. Let's just see if we can inspect some of these wind speeds that it's getting. Not massively high from what I'm seeing there, at least on this perspective. I'll get another one in just a moment, see if we can pick out anything more than that. More questions about whether it will become a Category 3 or not. There are people who, of course, come in and out of this coverage, but, well, the conclusion is it doesn't really matter, given that it's a 110 mile per hour Category 2, and that the Category 3 threshold begins at 111 miles an hour. So I wouldn't get hung up on a number.
Exactly.
Category
Regardless of number, whether it's 115, 110, does not, put aside the destruction potential this hurricane has here. Like you said, regardless of that 5 mile per hour difference, doesn't matter here. This is still a serious storm that's about to make landfall in Louisiana here, unfortunately. And just really hope everybody prepared for this. This is a fast-moving hurricane too. This is moving to the northeast. As of the last update I heard, though, at 22 miles per hour northeast here due to this cold front. So it's really incredible to see this happening at this time of the year in this part of the world.
quite a small area on the eastern side of the eye that is getting very high velocity values. Now, before I read out the number, I should point out that the velocities are in the air from the radar site. Obviously, the radar goes out in one particular direction. It's not going to follow the curvature of the Earth, so it's actually a few thousand feet up, but they're getting 140 miles per hour on the eastern side. That's aloft.
They've actually been getting 140 miles an hour readings on velocity for a few hours now. And
As it gets closer, it gets more impressive, though, because the angle narrows.
Yeah,
and it becomes closer to the ground.
Because these 140 mile an hour velocity readings started about 6 to 7 hours ago, and it's still got them.
So just a reminder, that's not to say that we have 140 mile an hour winds on the ground, but we have at least 110 mile per hour winds on the ground. That's sustained winds with higher gusts. So I think that might be serious enough for the time being. The storm's expected to make landfall very shortly. Looks like it's going to be within half an hour.
Yep.
And let's go actually back to the very latest imagery. Again, as I said before, this is the most recent imagery you'll find anywhere, this particular view that we're looking at. Those latest frames show that the eye has crossed one of those islands, and I'll have to find out which one. The centre of the eye wouldn't have passed over it, but that looks to be Timbalier Island, which is now probably in the eye.
I mean, this is probably their brief reprieve from the worst of the storm. They've just passed through the northeastern and northern eye wall, and then just because the pace this storm is moving at, by the time you even get 30 minutes from now, conditions will be rapidly deteriorating for them again as they get into the other side of the eye wall. And that's a sign for people inland too, as the storm makes landfall and comes on shore. If you're watching this and in the direct path of the eye, if conditions die down a bit just because you're inside the center, that is not ever a good excuse in the first place to go outdoors, but especially so when the system's moving so quickly and accelerating, because if you're out there for just a second too long and you really have a short window in the first place, you could get caught up in very unseemly and dangerous conditions.
Exactly. This is not going to be, kind of a sally where you're going to be in the eye for, at least an hour straight. This is going to be, this is increasing in forward speed here as it's making landfall. This is moving northeast at 22 miles per hour here. So even if you do get in the eye, you're not going to be in it for that long here. So it's really, detrimental that you stay inside where you are when the eye passes over, because you don't want to be out and about and the eye comes over, the eye moves over you and you get back into the secondary eye wall here and you get stuck in those strong winds again. Really not a wise decision to make here. So regardless, please just stay safe in this hurricane here, and to stay safe and hunker down for it.
I'm also pretty concerned, actually, because movement in the last hour or two has been more west than expected.
Yeah, I'm starting to notice that right now on the last few frames.
Yep, the old forecast track from 10 a.m. Central Time had this passing largely over the lake there, going well east of New Orleans, but I mean, at this rate, it is starting to move a bit more westerly. If it moves more north-northwest instead of straight, or north-northeast, I'm sorry, rather than just northeast, there is the chance for a more direct eye passage over New Orleans proper. The reason you'd see such a deviation within a relatively short time window is just because the angle of the trough it's interacting with is slightly different than what they were putting in the old forecast, or what the models were saying before, and that leads to a slight track adjustment westward in the end. But even so, that has large implications.
And again, on the inset there, you can see the eye just opening a little bit more again in the very latest frames. That last frame on that particular sequence is as of 2 minutes ago, and at that time the eye was on satellite 6 miles, the centre of the eye 6 miles off Timbalier Island, so that will probably be a landfall there within about 10 to 15 minutes. and that would be the first landfall, a very small island, one of the barrier islands. As far as I know, unpopulated, or at least only irregularly visited, and then on to probably the mainland there.
So this thing's moving at a very quick pace. We're looking at probably at this rate, a landfall in mainland Louisiana within the next hour now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Very short.
Within the next half an hour.
Yep, very short
60
time frame.
And 60-mile-an-hour plus gusts are being recorded along the west delta in Louisiana at this time. Already seeing 60+ mile-an-hour gusts. And those gusts will continue to increase as Zeta gets closer to land.
But for the time being, we're looking again at Grand Isle there from Isaac, and you can see the spray really blowing now on that imagery. Grand Isle is about 32 miles from the center of the storm's eye. It doesn't look like they'll get the eye. It looks like they'll remain within the eye wall unless it has a jog towards the east. But that's probably the closest camera that's active that's from the storm center right now.
Yeah, I was looking at cameras earlier, and there's some from Golden Meadow, but of course, right before we go on air, they all go down. So the closest one I got right now is from Grand Isle, Louisiana, and then the next closest after this one probably would go down would be ones from Houma, Louisiana.
It's hard to get a sense of scale on that camera as well. How far would you reckon the sea is there in that image? Is it really close, or I really can't tell? Or is the camera elevation, the land there? Is it on a little bit of a platform?
I would say it's probably raised up at least 2 stories, perhaps looking at it, and probably at least maybe about 100 feet or so from
Really?
the coastline here. I would think, but I could be wrong here. I need to do more research on this camera
What's
here.
that?
But
Something was just flapping about there.
I think maybe pieces of maybe boardwalk or stuff that just washed in from past storms this hurricane season, just along the coastline there.
But conditions are really getting pretty poor there. Let's see if we've got some more questions. Questions about the Levee system in New Orleans. How is it expected to shape up against this storm?
I think Nelson would be the best one to answer that, as he's a New Orleans resident. But of course, he's having to finish his preparations. But considering the expectations right now are in a range, or at least a couple hours ago, we were in the range of that area being between 3 to 5 feet and 5 to 7 feet. That they'd be able to take it just fine, even if those go up a good amount. That the levee system would be able to handle the issue without too much of an issue. Fortunately, the storm didn't get much larger or stronger, days ahead of time, and a lot of this has been a last-second change. So that limits surge somewhat, despite the very quick forward speed that the system's having.
And the eye just having one last reappearance there in the latest few minutes. The eye temperature increasing to about, actually we've just got a new frame, eye temperature is currently 0 degrees Celsius, just for a very brief period. And now it's estimated that the storm is 3 miles off the coast of Timbalia Island.
Just a little estimate on the webcam, because I found out where it's actually at here, and it's roughly about 275 miles away from the coastline here, this webcam. If I'm reading it right.
So the National Hurricane Center will update in 15 minutes. They may well call it a landfall. I'm not sure, because there's that bay there as well the storm has to traverse through. Let's take another look at the radar imagery just now. This is what it is at the present time, and there's looks like Grand Isle is going to be in for a push of darker oranges and reds there on the radar very shortly. There's another frame that's just come through, looking pretty nasty on the eastern side, northeastern, right round the eye there.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the clear shots to see the eye while using radar. You know, really coming on shore right now. The actual eye is still fairly offshore, but that rapid scan infrared just zooms in on the center, on the bottom left corner of the screen. You know, we're really minutes away. I wouldn't be surprised if they say it's a landfall at the top of the hour, but you know, knowing them as well, they sometimes like to give out the regular advisory, and then when it really is official, put out a special update even 10 minutes later and say, okay, this is the landfall point now. So it's going to be one or the other at this point in regards to what they're going to say, but that doesn't really change whatsoever the life-threatening impacts that are going to be occurring.
I mean, I don't know. Radar tells a little bit of a different story. The satellite would suggest that the eye is making landfall on the eastern side of the island. Radar suggests it's on the western side of Timbalia Island. This island is around 8 miles wide, so certainly most of it will be in the eye. The center of it's going to pass over very shortly indeed.
Yeah, and then almost immediately after that, straight into mainland southeastern Louisiana now too.
So places that are very close to the storm center right now, and not being local, do pardon me if there's any pronunciation issues, but Cocodrie on the western side of the northwestern part of the storm. On the eastern side, Leeville and Port Fourchon, and also up to Grand Isle on the right hand side. You can just about make it out on the edge of the screen. Up to Golden Meadow, they could get an eye pass. Galliano further north could get an eye pass. Cutoff and Cloverley Farms could get a eye pass, and then on towards the northeast towards Lafitte, and then just east of New Orleans we're expecting in maybe a couple of hours time.
Yeah, and at this point we're kind of waiting a little bit for the National Hurricane Center's full advisory because we're going to get a dump of new information. But I think something important to note for people that are new coming to watch is that a lot of the times flooding is from rainfall, of course, and then storm surge are the largest direct risks. Flooding causes 90% of the deaths from hurricanes. We're kind of in a unique situation here where flash flooding is a slight risk over a very large region from where it is right now all the way up to New York City, Long Island, and southwestern Connecticut, with the track this storm's going to take. But because it's going so quickly, you're going to be hard pressed to find any areas that are expecting more than 2 to 4, 1 to 2 inches of rain, unless they're in a more mountainous area and can wring out potentially 4 to 6 inches of rainfall. So this isn't the largest direct rainfall total threat from prolonged rainfall, but you still have some risk of flash flooding, and then importantly for the coastline, a substantial risk of storm surge. We've gone over those numbers already, with the maximum expected right now of 6 to 9 feet along coastal Mississippi. And then of course the wind threat, which not only is near major hurricane strength, the storm comes on shore right now for southeastern Louisiana, and a hurricane threat most likely for New Orleans in terms of sustained wind speeds. But we're also going to be seeing those damaging tropical storm force winds extend very far inland, which is why you have tropical storm warnings all the way into North Carolina right now.
It's crazy. We are expecting the update from the National Hurricane Center at any time in the next 10 minutes or so. It'll be interesting to see whether they first call landfall and whether they call for any further intensification, whether it is towards Category 3 status or not. What are we thinking in the team here?
Well, the latest from reconnaissance is that they have penetrated the southeast eye wall. The pressure, extrapolated pressure, has continued to drop from the last pass. Although that doesn't necessarily mean that the pressure itself has dropped, because extrapolated pressure can change. But compared to when we went through the southeast eye wall last, the area of Category 3 level flight level winds has increased substantially.
Really?
And has actually gone up 5 knots. while the SFMRs were almost all contaminated due to the significant wave heights. But still managed to get almost Category 2 unflagged. So this could be a major, but we need to see the eastern eye wall, which is currently almost on shore.
Is the new update out from the National Hurricane Center yet? Because a lot of people, I think, in the chat are trying to say it is right now.
Nothing that we can see just now.
No, I haven't seen anything that
Yeah.
indicated it as such.
Well, I mean, sometimes it comes on to different pages differently depending on your geographic region and the browser type that you're using. But you know, kind of a wait and see at the moment right now. But regardless of whether or not it's 110 miles an hour or if they decide for some reason to up it to 115, you know, it's still obviously a life-threatening storm nonetheless, and people shouldn't really be treating this any differently based on such a, you know, minute number change. You know, sure,
Absolutely.
if we're looking back on statistics a couple months from now, we'll say, oh, you know, this upped the number of major hurricanes in the area. Of course, it'd be record-breaking if it did it right now in this location. But nonetheless, for people that are in direct harm right now in southeastern Louisiana, in New Orleans, in Mississippi, a minor classification change like that when we're already at 110 miles an hour isn't going to be, you know, a substantial game changer in how impacts will end up occurring. So, you know, hopefully everyone's preparations are either complete or rushed to completion imminently right now.
As soon as we get some news, we'll let you know. I don't think it will say a huge amount that we're not expecting, but, well, we'll see. You're watching Force 13 Live. Hurricane Zeta is imminently making landfall. Perhaps it even already has, looking at that radar imagery. It's hard to tell just now, but it's extremely close to a landfall on Timbalia Island, which is the narrow one there that you can see on the edge, the barrier island on the coast, and then into Terrebonne Bay, and then towards the northeast, moving inland over Louisiana. And we're just hanging back waiting for that update at this point. It's probably the most sensible thing to do right now.
If there's
I
anything
think-
fortunate,
I think-
and I'm sorry, you go ahead first.
Yeah, I think knowing the NHC and kind of the evidence they run with, I'd say they're more likely to stick with 110 miles an hour than upgrade to 100 to 115.
You know, a bit off topic from that as well, but if there's any solace in this, and, you know, unfortunately this is hitting a very high population density area going straight into New Orleans as a hurricane, but because much of its redevelopment has been in less than the past 24 hours, the storm's size is more moderate despite going over the Yucatan Peninsula and enlarging its circulation. You know, yesterday morning there was that amazing shot of the massive band in association with the periphery of the storm stretching from the northern Gulf of Mexico all the way down to Central America. You know, now we have a much more defined system, but it's pretty average in size. So at least as of the last full advisory, the largest individual quadrant for tropical storm force winds was 130 miles in the southeast, and the southwest quadrant was only 40 miles. So, you know, regardless of the very quick intensification that we've seen and the very large threat that this does bring, not just to Louisiana, but well inland, it is fortunate, at least for some aspects, that it hasn't been able to gain as much size as other systems have when they're coming into landfall in this area.
It's been such a frazzling year that I've even lost count of how many hurricanes have hit Louisiana now.
It will be the fifth tropical cyclone to make landfall, and the third hurricane strength system to make landfall in Louisiana.
And plenty more that threaten Louisiana as well.
Yet,
I would argue though that that Marco is kind of an oddball with it in this one because it's hard. I'm not even sure if it made landfall as a Cat 1 or a TS.
Marco made landfall as a tropical, I think a very, very weak tropical storm at 40 miles per hour.
Yeah, they didn't even have tropical storm warnings issued because the circulation had dissipated at that point almost. But
Yeah, most of the rain was situated over the Florida Panhandle with that one.
you know, I think something of note, though, despite the absurdity of this hurricane season and this being a record 11th named storm landfall in the U.S. for the season, and the 5th one in Louisiana, I think that's a record for one season for the state of Louisiana. This is only the first hurricane to make landfall or bring hurricane conditions to the New Orleans metro, despite the fact that that part of Louisiana has been under 5-day cones from the National Hurricane Center for, I think, close to 3 weeks of the year at this point. There's an amazing graphic on Twitter that had color coded the entire basin based on how many days or advisories they were under, a cone from, full advisory. And
They are cool, those
Southeastern Louisiana was the top spot by a substantial margin. So this state in particular has been under fire all season long.
And to say that Florida had it bad in 2004.
And it goes to show that it's not always the same places every year.
Indeed.
Recon has penetrated the eastern eye wall just before it moves ashore. They have found winds in excess of 115 knots at flight level, and they have found many suspect SFMRs, but one 87-knot non-suspect. Others
Interesting.
were suspect and higher. Obviously, this near to the coast, waves become an issue with the SFMR readings, but a second lot of Category 4 flight level winds adds support to the idea that the NHC discounting the 119 knot flight level winds earlier might not have been, they might not have been discountable after all.
So you're really suggesting this could be a Category 3 landfall now?
Oh,
It may or may not be a major. Regardless, I don't think they'll change it now. I think that if it is upgraded, it will happen after extensive analysis in the post-season. But unless we get a drop-sonde data that supports 100 knots, I don't think it'll be upgraded at this time.
also just would like to on this camera here, you can see it's really rocking and rolling now, and there's a lot more waves that are coming along the coastline here. And I got before the new updates comes in, I want to say this camera is located on southwestern part of Grand Isle, Louisiana. It's located about 75 miles away from the sea there, and it's about 2 stories high on the house here, and you can see the waves clearly coming on shore here, and just really nasty situation there.
So that is at a height. I didn't hear you earlier when you answered that question the first time, but yeah, wow.
The camera's
Yeah,
elevated.
It's about 2 stories up, and it's about 275 miles away from the sea line there. Because this is there's a hill right here. That little green line there is a hill, so it makes it look a little shorter than it actually is.
Yeah.
And yeah, but just wanted to let you know that before the update comes in.
Which is due at any time. It's just short of 2 minutes to now, and usually when the National Hurricane Center put out the hourly updates, they're pretty on the dot. I think it's, I would say probably, could it be beyond dispute that the storm has made landfall at this point? It's certainly
Very
moving
close.
quickly.
I'd give it a couple more minutes.
And the update is out from the National Hurricane Center, and they're running with 110 miles per hour and a pressure of 970 millibars. No changes in the warnings. So nothing big from that update. We're just waiting for the public advisory. Are they going to use the word landfall, or you got to watch very carefully on the words that they use. Could say making landfall or has made landfall. But apart from a headline, that doesn't mean particularly much for those on the ground right now.
Even if they put out, the new advisory in like 15 minutes, say, oh, it's made landfall now, for people in Duloc, in Golden Meadow, that isn't going to be changing whatsoever how they're acting right now. It's still extremely dangerous and life-threatening storm, and as this begins to move inland more, Louisiana is going to see, or not just Louisiana, New Orleans in particular, the metro area is going to see conditions deteriorate rapidly as the storm starts to plow through the area. I'm going to be interested to see if they've made any minor track adjustments to the west, which would be implicative of a more northern eye wall impact or even eastern eye wall impact on New Orleans, the city, rather than the western eye wall.
Just a
We have
note.
the public advisory.
Just a note, though. Well, go ahead.
The text is Zeta making landfall in southeastern Louisiana.
So yeah, present
Oh.
tense on that. Well, it certainly is. Certainly is.
Observations from an Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunter aircraft indicate that Zeta is making landfall near Cocodrie, Louisiana.
Yeah, just east of there by the looks of things. Satellites
Movement
suggest
speed
the
is
ice-
near 24 miles an hour,
Okay.
with a faster motion expected towards the north-northeast, followed by an even faster motion northeastward on Thursday, turning east-northeastward again on Friday.
So it's
They expect a second landfall on the Louisiana coast this evening.
what do they mean by that?
They mean that they expect it to move back out over the Gulf and then make a second landfall on the Louisiana coast in the same way that Katrina did.
That's hard to do.
That's what they're expecting. We have the discussion if you want to read it.
I just
if
want to ensure that they're not talking about the storm crossing Lake Pontchartrain. That's my burning question really on that.
They
Yeah.
specifically say the Mississippi coast.
Okay, the Mississippi coast. There we go then. You said
would be-
Louisiana at first.
I mean, if they're saying that, that's indicative that they're expecting it to barely cross into the lake and then make landfall probably just east of the Louisiana-Mississippi border in Mississippi instead. That's probably the best indication you'll get off of that. But regardless, Morgan City, New Orleans, Biloxi, all of them are probably going to get hurricane conditions. Biloxi in particular is going to be in the thick of it for storm surge as well. Waiting for the new graphics, but at least this morning they were expecting the area of 6 to 9 feet there, so that's still a major concern. I know we've been talking a lot about Louisiana and the New Orleans metro, but coastal Mississippi is still going to see very significant impacts, especially because we're not really talking about the system being as much of a prolonged high rainfall total threat, so much as a quick moving storm that can bring those more substantial storm surge totals because of its forward speed, the substantial risk of flash flooding along the landfall location starting to head inland right now, as well as those really damaging winds.
Looking at the forecast discussion,
Yeah, this is
they
what I was
now
gonna.
expect that the storm will not drop below tropical storm force in its existence during
Yeah.
transition. They expect it to bottom out at 45 miles an hour and then re-strengthen slightly before being absorbed into the westerlies in 2 days' time.
That's what I was going to bring up with you just a moment ago regarding that. Let's go through the National Hurricane Center key messages for those who may have just joined us. A life-threatening storm surge is beginning along portions of the northern Gulf Coast, with the highest inundation expected to occur somewhere between Port Fourchon, Louisiana, and Dauphin Island, Alabama, especially along the Mississippi coast. Overtopping of local non-federal levee systems is possible within southeastern Louisiana outside of the hurricane and storm damage risk reduction system. Extremely dangerous hurricane conditions are spreading across portions of the hurricane warning area along the southeastern Louisiana coast and will spread to the Mississippi coast this evening. Tropical storm conditions will spread into portions of the tropical storm warning area along the Alabama and far western Florida Panhandle coasts in the next few hours. There's the latest cone, by the way, latest position update on the screen. Strong, damaging wind gusts, which could cause tree damage and power outages, will spread well inland across portions of southeastern Mississippi, Alabama, northern Georgia, the Carolinas, and southeastern Virginia tonight and Thursday, due to Zeta's fast forward speed, wind gusts could be especially severe across the southern Appalachian Mountains on Thursday. And through Thursday, heavy rainfall is expected from portions of the central U.S. Gulf Coast into the mid-Mississippi Valley, Ohio Valley, southern to central Appalachians, and mid-Atlantic states near and in advance of Zeta. This rainfall will lead to flash, urban, small stream, and minor river flooding. And as you can see on the cone now, expected to remain a storm strength cyclone, will turn extratropical along the way. And just for those who are wondering, does anyone want to explain here the difference between tropical and extratropical and what that transition will mean?
I guess the simplest way to explain it is, a tropical cyclone is one that's warm core and it's based, around drawing energy from warm sea surface temperatures and ocean heat content. Extratropical cyclones influenced by baroclinic forces and atmospheric conditions instead.
Looking again at the latest radar, you can see the location of the storm right now, the eye and the eye wall. You can see where the eye wall is all the way around, a horseshoe shape really, from Duloc all the way around to, what was that location? Golden Meadow and beyond towards the southeast. So Grand Isle on the very edge of the inner eye wall, and Isaac's still showing us that the waves have been getting very heavy recently.
Yeah, they're getting progressively higher and higher, and even some of them covering the camera for brief periods of time here as they come in sets here, and it's a really decreasingly worsening scenario here looking at the live camera in Grand Isle.
So we still can't call an official landfall just yet because, well, any kind of landfall just yet. Inconclusive whether it actually made landfall on Timbalia Island, but the coast of Louisiana proper, you're looking at landfall will be somewhere around the... well, obviously there's not many areas that are developed around that area. It's all very swampy and full of lakes. Somewhere around Lake Barr, Lake Felicity, that area is probably where the landfall is going to be, and then up towards the northeast, towards Galliano and La Rose. But nonetheless, it will have wide-reaching implications. This is Grand Isle that you're looking at on the webcam. New Orleans has had persistent rainfall so far, and we got a report not long ago that 60-mile-an-hour winds were occurring. Where was that again? Can any of us remember that one now? I can't. But nonetheless, it's becoming rather widespread.
Yeah. The forecast discussion, the reason they say that landfall hasn't occurred yet is because they're putting the centre over the Terrebonne Bay.
Well, yes, that is where it is, definitely. Oh, actually, we've got Nelson with us now, who's got his own view of what's going on at his place near New Orleans. The storm moving through, and I'm not sure whether he's able to speak to us or not, but here's your opportunity.
Hello, Nathan. How are you today?
We're fine, Nelson. Let's talk about what's going on at your place.
Well, I do apologize for the audio, but when you are in a hurricane, and of course we have not had hurricane force winds at my house yet, and I know some of this panning is jerky, but really the winds, they've come in gusts as they tend to do in hurricanes. I've had some concerning issues with my shed, and my screen door almost just slammed shut there. The roof of my shed was beginning to lift off in some places with some of the even earlier gusts that we've gotten.
Wow.
The rain is not that heavy. It's about a half an inch per hour right now. We're coming up on about 0.8 inches for the event. That'll certainly increase as the eye wall gets closer to us. I estimate it'll be near me in about the next hour and a half to hour and 40 minutes, based on just tracking the eye through radar. Again, have not seen any real damage to this point. and the wind gusts, there's nothing really persistent. Obviously, I live in a neighborhood, as you can see, quite sheltered with houses all around. So the winds are going to skip and muddle themselves over the rooftops and things like that. But I would hate to be in the open. I don't know if you can see on that pink house way out there. You can actually see the rain sheeting off of the roof. And right now we're in kind of a lull in the winds, but you may hear it pick back up. So again, I apologize for that, but there's nothing I can do about it being windy in New Orleans right now.
Naturally. So the storm continuing towards the north and sort of a bit of a westward motion in the last hour or so, Nelson. Are you prepared for every eventuality?
I believe I am. That's all I can say. You never know exactly what's going to happen. If that tree back there were to happen to crash through the house, that would be highly problematic. But I have a plentiful supply of water. I've got enough canned food. I've got ways to cook the food in terms of propane. I have a lot of LED lights that are fully charged, batteries that are fully charged, battery packs fully charged. I don't see any real threat of flooding in my area, so I know I'll be able to get out. And I don't imagine there's going to be an issue with my water sources, but I do have the backups just in case. I anticipate being without power for a couple days. I don't know when that's going to happen, but right now we have power. And sorry, again, things running away from me while I'm out here. We do have power. We've still got cable, internet, all that sort of stuff. So right now the utilities are on in New Orleans. I don't expect that for much longer.
And just a quick one, Nelson. When was the last significant impact at your place?
Oh, well, I haven't had one at this house, which is actually in the city of New Orleans. Back when I went through Isaac and Gustav when I lived in Baton Rouge, and that was pretty close and without power for about a week at those times. So it's been quite a few years since I've gone through what's going to happen today.
Well, keep safe, Nelson, and thanks very much for staying on the line and your update, and hopefully we can hear more from you later on, but of course safety first on that one.
Yeah, I will pop back in and out as anything interesting happens, but I do have to conserve batteries. I do have to protect my own property. As I said, I did not expect the roof of the shed to come up, so I had to do some quick crawling around on a roof and screwing in some piles with while it was raining on me. So I will check in as I can.
Thanks very much. Looking back at the Grand Isle webcam right now, Isaac, any news? Or is it still just about the same?
I'm noting that there's some flooding going along the coastline.
Oh, there is.
You can see water accumulating there, and the waves getting still even higher here. Of course, some of them occasionally covering the camera here for a few seconds, and a really deteriorating scenario here in Grand Isle. So I really hope, as you can see right there, I really hope everybody is prepared for this. Unfortunately, I didn't have as a lot of time to prepare for this because this is a fast-moving hurricane here. But the good news about a fast-moving hurricane is that those Category 2 force winds won't last too long here. Nathan.
And of course, I mean, it's tough right now, but if you've got any comments or questions for us, you could try your luck and see if we can fit you in. We'll try our best, guaranteed. Start your message with Force 13 all in text.
I feel something that we should cover is that in the latest update, the National Hurricane Center increased their surge forecasts.
Oh, right.
So
that's
it's now
something
6 to 9 foot along the Gulf Coast, immediately where landfall is happening, and they've increased it to 7 to 11 foot along the Mississippi coast.
There you go.
With waves above that.
Wow.
Some questions here then. What are the highest recorded 1 minute sustained flight level winds from Recon? Okay.
They topped out at 119 knot earlier. At that point, the National Hurricane Center determined that they weren't representative of the surface winds, but given the radar data that we've been receiving, it may well be later determined that they were representative, and if so, that might be grounds for an upgrade to 115 miles an hour. But at this point, that is a case for the post-season
Yep.
analysis, and I'm not interested in talking about it further.
Operationally, we're not going to have a 115 mile an hour landfall, which appears to have caused a little bit of controversy in our chat. Nonetheless, Zeta at 110 miles per hour at this point. I'm not sure whether the National Hurricane Center will issue an update statement as soon as they think that it's made landfall on the mainland of Louisiana. We will break in if it does happen. We're still not convinced just yet. It's possible that it has made some landfalls, but again, this is literally just a figurative thing. The worst of the conditions are already being felt across a significant part of the of southern Louisiana.
Well, the National Hurricane Center just tweeted that Zeta is making landfall again.
I mean, yeah, it's...
So they just
I
repeated
know
the advisory.
I know it's pedantic, but it is present tense. I mean, you know, well, look at that now.
Yeah. That's it starting to go ashore with the surge now. And keep in mind that green is about, I estimate, I had a look on Street View, it is about 10 feet from the beach, height-wise.
Gosh.
You can see the water accumulating there along the coastline too, as the hurricane moves on, and then of course this camera's shaking here.
It looks like it's gotten much worse in the last couple of minutes.
Yeah,
Oh, it most definitely has within the past 5 minutes. When I was noting when you guys were talking with Nelson, it started to get a lot worse here, and I could see it clearly on the camera here why nobody should be out and about in this hurricane here. It's a fast-moving hurricane and a dangerous hurricane at that too. Regardless of its category, still a dangerous hurricane, and you can see on this live camera exactly why nobody should be outside right now. And again, this camera, for point of reference, of course, is in Grand Isle, Louisiana. It's on the southwestern part of Grand Isle, Louisiana, located about 275 miles away. I mean, not miles, 275 feet, I should say, away from the coast, the immediate coastline here. And it's about 2 stories up here on the second story of a house. And you can see, of course, the winds and the storm surge buffeting the camera here. And I really hope we don't lose this camera.
Yeah, this is approximately 25 miles from the center of the eye, so it's pretty damn close. I don't think we've managed to get anything this close to a hurricane this year that's still working and operational.
I really hope it holds out. We had like I said before, we had some cameras from Golden Meadow, but those went out, of course, as soon as we started streaming, with my luck. So I had to resort to this one, and then the next one, when this one goes down, the next closest one I have is from Houma, Louisiana. Will be the next one when this one goes down.
Comes with the territory, though, no doubt.
I think the NHC is breaking in now to say that it's made landfall, if I'm not mistaken. You know, I mean, it's more semantics at this point, just because, you know, it's imminent anyways, and it's more of a symbolic phase. You know, we already know the impacts and how significant they're going to be right now. But, you know, regardless, it just goes to reiterate, we're kind of in that final stretch of the, I guess, main initial stage of the cyclone's lifetime, as that eye is trying to clear up on infrared before coming on shore right now, at least
just
the
cross
center of the
over
eye.
to infrared just now to show you what's happening there. Those latest frames, there it goes. Wow.
Yep.
Certainly
Opening
one
up.
to try hard is Hurricane Zeta.
Yeah, and while it's making landfall too, deep convection with cold cloud tops blowing up over land too, north of the eye on that northern eye wall as well. So, I mean, definitely something not to take with any lightness whatsoever, especially as this moves inland too, because as Kay noted, you know, they're not expecting this to go below 45 mile an hour sustained winds the whole time it's inland. So even though right now, at least, there are only tropical storm warnings up into North Carolina, tropical storm conditions are still possible in association with Zeta from its current location all the way to the mid-Atlantic coast. Although, to be fair, by the time it gets to, you know, into Georgia and North Carolina, it's more likely than not that those tropical storm force winds will be displaced from the center of the system.
And that's thanks in part the wind speed staying into the storm area, into storm territory, thanks in part to the storm's fast movement as well.
Yep, and while that means that we have a system that's going to be having winds displaced from the center as it goes inland, not really winding down and dissipating
Wow.
like we see a lot of the times. And I guess the other fortunate thing on that is that the total rainfall accumulation is relatively low, at least at the landfall location of what you'd expect. In the mountainous areas of North Carolina, along the spine of the Appalachian Mountains, you could still see at least direct rainfall from the system reach its local maximums there, with 4 to 6 inches expected along more significant, although rural locations in western North Carolina.
Well, the National Hurricane Center haven't released an update to confirm a landfall. It is in the process of doing so right now. I guess the main feature we're looking at is this webcam, which is holding on as the conditions are pretty appalling there right now.
I'm seeing a lot of people wondering where this camera is. The camera location is on the bottom of your screen. This is in Grand Isle, Louisiana, at the southwest part of Grand Isle, Louisiana here. And this camera, like I said, is about 275 feet from the immediate coastline here, from the water line there. And it's about 2 stories up on in a person's house here, facing, of course, towards the Gulf of Mexico here. And I haven't looked at radar in a while, but I think there may be scraping, or perhaps maybe just getting into the eye wall here, if I'm not mistaken, Nathan. You probably could
around probably the edge of the inner eye wall there.
Yeah, and you could see
wow
over the past
it's
10
really
minutes
going
here.
now.
Yeah, the past 10 minutes here, the conditions are rapidly deteriorated here. You can see water accumulated along the coastline here, and then some of the sand from the dunes being pushed away there. As you can see, the little clump of dirt there in the middle of your screen. And again, this is in Grand Isle, Louisiana, and this is pretty much nearing, probably about as close to the eye wall as you could get with a live camera at this point. And you can see the rapidly deteriorating conditions. Just about 10 minutes ago, the waves were not even this high, and 10 minutes makes a difference here.
We've been watching it the whole time. Crazy.
This webcam in particular, earlier on, it kind of felt more like, oh, this is just, rain coming in sideways is almost what it felt like. But now, even in the past few minutes, you've seen the development to where you can directly see the waves crashing above the barrier here, coming on, and then, almost flooding the view of the webcam completely at times.
Yeah, I really hope it stays on, but seeing how these waves are getting bigger and bigger here, I'm doubting that at this point. And again, the next closest camera that I have here is from Houma, Louisiana. And I'm sure Nelson probably has a lot of other cameras that he knows of as well that I don't. But this is the closest one that I could find here. And like I said, really classic example why nobody should be outside right now in this hurricane. This is a fast-moving hurricane. So that's a good thing, because those hurricane force sustained winds are not going to last too long. But that's a bad thing, of course, how it's going to be traversing over Louisiana here in a pretty fast manner here. So kind of a double-edged sword here. And this is again the current conditions in Grand Isle Beach, Louisiana, and incredible stuff here. Nathan?
Yep.
We've got some news to break here. Hurricane Zeta has made landfall in Terrebonne Parish, or is it county? Terrebonne County, I should say, which is around 11 miles southwest of Golden Meadow. That's where the storm has made landfall now, and that's what we've just called at this time. National Hurricane Center still with that statement that it's making landfall, but if you wanted it for sure here, we think at this point that Zeta has now made landfall.
The latest satellite imagery really is enough to confirm that. You'll probably see them either say in the next 2 minutes or at around the half-hour point as well. To concur with that, the center of the eye is really just on shore now, barely, but that is what a landfall is. And it'll continue to push inland at a pretty rapid pace. They upped the average 6-hour movement speed from 22 miles an hour to 24 miles an hour at the 5 p.m. advisory, and that's likely to only continue to rise over the next 6 to 12 hours. So as this thing really accelerates and picks up. So by the time we get to the top of the hour, most, if not all, the eye will already be over land.
Yeah. So there it is, that's the landfall. Let's go back to that camera then where it's still going on. Wow. What was that on the right hand side though? Is that a tree that was... Oh look, the water's really coming through.
Yeah, there's a palm tree to the right of this camera, just off screen, and also one to the left of it that I noted earlier.
This is incredible.
Yeah, it's... In about 15 minutes, this went from, you know, a decently, just kind of angry beach here to a violent scene here. And again, this is in Grand Isle, Louisiana, southwestern part of Grand Isle, Louisiana, about 275 miles away. I mean, miles, feet. I mean,
you keep 275
feet. It's been a long day. I'm sorry. 275 feet from the coastline here, about 2 stories up on a somebody's house here, looking, of course, towards the Gulf of Mexico. And again, really, just I can't stop saying it. A classic example why nobody should be out and about during this.
Yep, so if you just wanted that confirmation there, we have called a landfall on this storm right now. Makes little difference whether it fully has or not. There are 110 mile per hour sustained winds occurring on land. There's this on the coast. There's a surge of potentially 9 feet. And persistent rain in many parts of Louisiana that has been battered by numerous hurricanes and tropical storms this year, and here's another one onto that list.
Yeah. Incredible stuff.
And I just wanted to clear up some confusion in the chat as well. There, a lot of people like to use open source websites to read the reconnaissance data, and there were some SFMRs saying, 106 or 110 knots. Just to clear up, those were not, those ones that just came in right before the breaking news landfall. Those were not indicative of the actual strength of the storm. Those were flagged, so they're suspect. They're not accurate as a product of shoaling. So though, the system is not 105 to 110 knots based on those readings. 95 knots is still a reasonable estimate based on the current data, although we could see some, minor adjustments made in reanalysis. Regardless, though, obviously a continuous life-threatening situation over the next several days.
I mean, what you're looking at right there, that's life-threatening conditions.
Yeah. Surge is proper coming on now.
I know some people are... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's rare that we get the opportunity to see it in real time like this. Usually the camera gets knocked out long before the main part of the storm arrives, or it's not in the position that the storm makes landfall. We're certainly thankful to have this view.
Yeah, this is kind of a, we originally thought this was going to make landfall during the evening or during the night here, but it sped up a little bit at landfall, or near landfall, I should actually say here. And you can see this is what it looks like during the day here. So kind of fortunate how it's nearing landfall during the day here, but of course, still a dangerous storm here. And I know some people are probably wondering why you can't hear audio. There's no audio with this live camera, unfortunately, so there's not going to be any audio. I imagine if there was, it would be pretty loud at this point. But this is only just a video-only camera for those curious. And again, this is located in Grand Isle, Louisiana here.
And you'll see an erosion in real time there.
Yeah, this is about the span of 15, 20 minutes here. You've seen that happen here. Just look at those waves coming up shore here. And again, keep in mind, this is not in the worst of the hurricane here. The worst of the hurricane is... how far did you say that the eye?
About
the
25 miles from the eye.
Yeah, but about 25 miles away from the eye, this camera is. And
what was that?
Probably a piece of the palm tree flying off there on the right.
Yeah,
off
there's
screen.
another one. Wow.
That
Tremendous winds now. Look at that. I mean, we're just glued to this video at this point. That's tremendous winds blowing through there.
And again, this is not the worst of the winds here. This is not going to get in the inner eye wall. This is at best part of the outer eye wall here. This is not the inner eye wall. You're not going to see those 110-mile-an-hour sustained winds in this live camera here, at least. So just keep in mind that, and just imagine, a slightly stronger storm here near the landfall area, wherever it may be here along the coast. And just picture that it might be a little bit worse than what you're seeing right now on this live camera.
Kay, any further thoughts right now? Recon, are they done? Is Kay with us? Or anyone else who's got recon data with them right now?
Haven't been looking at it in a while here, but I don't want to take my my view off this camera here on the screen.
Flight level pressures or extrapolated surface level pressures that they were measuring at the lowest point were around 967, but some of those were occurring with 34 knot flight level winds. So the pressure could be down closer to 970, maybe 969, a little bit more deepening right before the storm came on shore, but not enough to really change the story that much. Other than getting the most exact data points for when we're heading back into reanalysis.
Well,
fair.
The recon plane is currently in the sensor, and it's indicating that the extrapolated pressures in the eye are similar to how they were at the last pass, but what makes this so remarkable is that it means the storm has intensified up to landfall in very late October in the northern Gulf of Mexico.
And you thought early October was bad with Michael. Not that this is a Category 5 or anything, but it has intensified up to landfall, and if it had more time, who knows?
Posted a video there in the discussion. It's from the Sheriff's Department in Golden Meadow of the northeastern eye wall. Looks pretty intense.
Someone in our team here will have to get that up for us. But this, once again, is live from Grand Isle, and it really is incredible to watch. If you've just joined us, Hurricane Zeta has made landfall in Louisiana. It made landfall in Terrebonne County. And the storm's intensity at landfall around 110 miles per hour sustained winds with higher gusts. Central pressure around 970-ish, maybe a little bit lower. And a storm surge potentially of 9 feet around this storm. In New Orleans, we've got Nelson over there, and we'll see if we can hear from him again later on. We had an update from him earlier. But right now, this is the point where those people who are near the storm, well, all preparations should be finished at this point, and it's hunker down time. It should have been some time ago. If you do have any comments or questions for us, we'll do our best to get them through on air. Start your message with Force 13 all in text, and we'll see if we can answer that. Just like Maxi Chan just now. Someone earlier requested for one of us to go out with a microphone and report the conditions live. Well, maybe one day. I mean, who knows, but...
I mean, technically, that Nelson was reporting the conditions live. It just wasn't in the eye wall.
Yes. I mean, I get how it's sort of makes it more real, and how certainly a thrill for the people in the storm, as long as they know what they're doing. But
you're asking someone to put their life in danger when they go into a hurricane.
We've got a pretty good view as it is from this camera. Admittedly, quite rare that you get to see this kind of impact, but most of us are aware of what kind of impacts these storms have, and it's always dreadful to see what happens in the aftermath. Let's take some more questions, though. People are still asking whether it will become a Category 3. That chance has been extinguished, thankfully.
Well, at least operationally. People are asking what's going to happen for the rest of this season.
The new disturbance is what a couple of questions just there. There is, I don't want to bring to you more bad news in the middle of all this, but there is a 20% chance of development in the Caribbean Sea in the next 5 days. Now, models suggest that that will remain further south and probably affect Central America. But we know what models are like.
Given how favourable that aerial is, it's entirely possible that it could become a major before landfall, if it were to form and then rapidly intensify.
Just for reference, you saw that massive wave just crash over the camera there. This is around at least 25 feet above sea level.
This is, like I said, the 2 stories up here, and it's about 275 feet away from the coast line there. So it's, really remarkable here to see that some of these waves come up here and hit this camera, and you can see on occasionally on the right of your screen there, the palm tree getting battered by these waves here. Really incredible scene we're seeing right now in real time in Grand Isle Beach, Louisiana.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, this is an area that's going to end up seeing, massive surge. If I'm not mistaken, this is west of the eye wall, right, Isaac?
East.
East.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is east. So, despite the raised elevation protecting the area somewhat, surrounding areas that won't have this level of protection will definitely be seeing significant storm surge.
And this is not going to, like I said, the camera is not going to get the worst that this hurricane has to offer wind-wise.
Can you believe that?
So just picture right now, the stuff that you're seeing right now isn't the worst the hurricane has to offer. The worst the hurricane has to offer is about 20-25 miles away from where this live camera is. So just because you're seeing this and you think, oh, maybe that's probably not too bad, just think about what it is in the the exact center and the inner eye wall of this thing right now.
Don't think there'll be many people out there who'll claim to say that it's not too bad right now on that imagery.
And I do want to emphasize as well that the storm surge threat overall has gone up because they did adjust their forecast for the updated graphics packages that just came out recently.
Yes, do you want to go over that again for us?
Yeah, so this is just for storm surge. They upped the area where this camera is to 6 to 9 feet. Before that area was 5 to 8 feet for storm surge. From Port Fortune to the mouth of the Mississippi River. From the mouth of the Mississippi River to the mouth of the Pearl River, you're talking 5 to 7 feet. And they raised the area from the mouth of the Pearl River to the Mississippi-Alabama border, which was previously at 6 to 9 feet. That area is now at 7 to 11 feet for storm surge. So the storm surge threat has gone up yet again. You could see maximums up over 10 feet now for storm surge in Mississippi. And even for Lake Pontchartrain, the storm surge risk has gone to 4 to 6 feet. That was lower earlier today as well.
We have a tornado warning in Florida. The Panhandle, just near the border with Alabama, there is a tornado warning at this point. Northwest of Pensacola. So that's another part of this storm to consider now, with tornado warnings starting to come out and watches that are in effect already. So there's that tornado warning. Radar indicated Atmore in that warning zone.
And this isn't really a threat that's just going to be isolated to the coast as well. I know we've mentioned a lot, but there's always new people coming in. Because this storm is moving so quickly, a lot of this thunderstorm activity, even if the rainfall totals for a single location aren't projected to be particularly high, the threat for, the potential severe weather tornado risk with this system in general is going to extend inland from its current location all the way to the mid-Atlantic states, where it's forecast to exit back out to sea as a post-tropical system.
Gonna come in with some breaking news here. Tropical storm force winds there has been a report of tropical storm force winds in New Orleans, a large tree has been snapped in Bayou St. John, and this was about 10 minutes ago.
So first reports there out of New Orleans, and I expect that we'll be seeing a lot of that in the hours to come.
It's unfortunate to say that even though this has made landfall, that we're really seeing the threats for not just areas ahead of the storm, but large population density areas like New Orleans. We're not at the worst for those areas yet, even though the storm is inland. Because it's moving so quickly. Even if it's going to weaken over a comparatively quick time frame, we're expecting it down to moderate tropical storm strength by tomorrow. That means that New Orleans, for example, is still going to be getting substantial hurricane force sustained winds. If they get on the wrong side of the eye wall for a moment, they may end up getting some of the stronger sections of the storm, and that could bring them up towards Category 2 sustained winds for parts of the city, not even going into the metro area. And even further up into Mississippi, close to Mississippi and Alabama, towards further inland in Mississippi and Alabama, could also see hurricane conditions as well, just because the pace the storm is moving at. Similarly, Isaias of earlier this year, how we had tropical storm warnings going from South Carolina all the way up to Massachusetts at once. It's a similar threat in that regard, just crossing over a different geographic area.
Got a report coming in from Golden Meadow, Louisiana, of sustained winds of 83 miles per hour to gust up to 105 miles per hour.
Wow.
Wow, indeed.
So Category 2 gusts there, and that's around Golden Meadow. Well, it's very close to the center of the storm, actually. So, yeah, they should be in the eye, actually. This is a location, Grand Isle, though, that won't be getting the eye. It's getting the worst of both worlds here because it's getting full-on eye wall all the way through without an eye passage.
Another report coming in. Jefferson Parish, a personal weather station over there, recording so far 54 mile-an-hour sustained winds with a gust up to 87. And that's in Jefferson Parish.
I must say right now that the worst is passing Grand Isle, so I do wonder whether we'll see anything worse than what we've got right now, and maybe it has calmed down just slightly. Still extremely dangerous when you look at that.
Yeah, I'm really surprised this camera, knock on wood, is still online right now. It's incredible stuff here, and this just goes to show it doesn't take Cat 4, Cat 5 to cause really devastating impacts like you're seeing right now along the coast. Just take a look at that. And this is from Grand Isle Beach, Louisiana, southwest Grand Isle Beach. You can see the dune in front of the camera there, the little green spot there. Waves going over that dune there. See right there in that one, waves going over that dune there and probably flooding Grand Isle proper there, as you can see.
There's not much of a dune left.
It's that green thing right there. It's don't know how high it is in elevation. I would estimate maybe 10 feet high, but I mean, regardless, waves are going over there like it's no issue at all. You can see the wind streaming, of course, below that there.
Looking at the bigger picture then with the radar, you can see there lots of rainfall over New Orleans, Slidell, towards the west as well, as we get closer to the center of the hurricane for the New Orleans metropolitan area. Let me just have a quick look. I'm just going to do my best here and hope that it works, that we'll get to see the velocity and what kind of winds are being measured aloft. We'll get that up in just a moment.
Well, what we're hearing from the New Orleans metro area is that the first power outages have occurred and are becoming more widespread by the minute.
That is not much of a surprise, honestly, but there we have it. And unfortunately, that's probably going to get worse for another hour or two at least, more than that. Just try. Let me get a handle on the motion of this storm, actually, just to see if that direction is still and speed of movement is still the same. So in the last 1 hour and 25 minutes, the storm has moved 46 miles. So that's in the space of 85 minutes. 46 miles. But worryingly, it's still... Ooh, I'm not sure when I look at this imagery. This is probably only going to pass within 10 miles of New Orleans now.
Wow. So even if you're maybe on the eastern side of New Orleans, you may well get the eye.
Absolutely. Eastern New Orleans could get the eye at this point.
Yeah, I mean, even more on that too is, that means if they don't get the eye, they're almost certainly getting a piece of the eye wall, and that's obviously a portion of the storm that's going to be the strongest, particularly as you see, new convection as the storm is moving inland, bubbling up very strongly in the northern and northwestern portions of the eye wall. Those are areas that are potentially going to be going straight over Metro New Orleans in pretty short order, and even potentially going straight over New Orleans proper.
That's pretty worrying. Let's see if we get some more questions from viewers. What is the CDPS for Zeta right now? I have no idea. Probably a stage 4 or 5.
Yeah, we calculated it earlier. The only thing that's holding it back in particular is just the fact that it's moving so fast means those rainfall totals are going to be down. Like we said, right now we're looking at a localized maximum where you'd be applying the rating in each location of maybe about 4 inches at maximum. So unless they say the storm's larger than before, which they say it is by a very small amount in one of the quadrants, it still isn't enough to make a substantial change. It's a stage 4, an upper end of that, and that still means very significant damage can still occur, regardless of that rating not being as high as you might expect for a storm that we're giving coverage on. Regardless, it is extremely life-threatening.
Just a reminder that red marker there is a tornado warning in the Florida Panhandle region, northwest of Pensacola. And that will be entering Alabama soon. So that is one active tornado warning. You might just be able to make out the yellow outlines as well. That's the tornado watch zone, and that will be in effect during the passage of this storm. Areas to the northeast, especially in the outer bands, susceptible to tornado potential.
We do have some news from, it's not from the National Hurricane Center directly, but it is from the National Weather Service in Key West. They tweeted out that Zeta has made landfall in southeast Louisiana with max winds of 110 miles per hour, and it's a Category 2 hurricane still.
Yeah.
So that tells me that the National Hurricane Center did not upgrade it to a Category 3, which it doesn't really matter. It's not going to change the impacts that much. It's
Well, I think we knew that the real question was, were they going to make an update when the actual landfall happened? It doesn't look like they will. Yeah. They'll be coming out with the hourly update in 10 minutes, so we'll have the very latest from them regarding that.
I don't know if anyone is able to screenshot this thing in particular. If not, I can pull it up very quickly. But Tim pointed out in our comms room that the power outages are really starting to pile up from Zeta now as we start.
Strad, I believe we've got Nelson back here. Nelson, we've got visual.
Hello, Nathan. Things have really started deteriorating in Metro New Orleans at this time. Unfortunately, whenever the video comes up, the wind stops blowing as it tends to be gusty. And you can't really see in terms, in the video, what's really going on, how much trees are moving, just how much the wind is howling over the roofs and things like that. I just checked on my weather station. It's taking a pretty good beating. It's not going to get really accurate wind measurements because it's being knocked around, so it's not quite steady enough. but I do have a pressure of 994.5 at my location. And as I have said, the conditions are rapidly deteriorating. The rain has picked up, and the wind, both sustained and gusting, have become much more severe.
Now, parts of New Orleans without power, clearly you've still got it there. Do you know anything about how extensive they are on the ground there?
All I know is the total energy outages right now. I can't run back to my computer to see. I'm not going to drag that outside just in case. Right now, the west bank of the river, and you have to remember that the Mississippi River curves around Louisiana. So there are points where you actually have to go east to get to the west bank or south to get to the west bank. But much of the west bank in Jefferson Parish has lost power at this time. It is starting to creep in the lower Ninth Ward and the downtown areas of New Orleans. I do not know how long it will maintain around here. I don't expect it to be long, as I said, but we are certainly getting into some nasty weather.
Does any of our team have questions for Nelson whilst he's on the line?
I guess something useful for just educational purposes and safety purposes as well, for people watching that, may be under fire in future or right now. What are you going to be doing, as the storm passes to just make sure that you're staying as safe as you can?
Well, Strat, as you notice, there's a very limited field of view you're getting, and that's simply because I am not going to go stand in the street. I jokingly tied myself to the stop sign earlier today so I can say I beat Adam. And beyond that, I am staying in a patio area. It's fairly well enclosed. While you were asking me that question, in fact, I just saw small debris, but debris nonetheless being blown down the street. So I'm not exposing myself to much of the wind. I don't know if you can see it. And again, it doesn't do justice on video. Once it gets much worse, I will be, staying away from windows, moving chairs, because I'm still watching TV as long as I've got it and can get the information and following up on the stream, as you've seen in the chat. But I will kind of move myself to an area with fewer windows, though. I am pretty convinced that my windows are safe. They not only have burglar bars on them, but where they are exposed, there are houses on either side, so hopefully they get it rather than me. I know it's terrible to say, but my house is in a protected spot for the windows. Obviously, I've got weather radios around with same alert messaging, so I can get location-specific alerts. And so if a tornado warning or anything like that were to be called, I would then move to the bathroom, which is my most interior room in the house.
But it looks like, Nelson, you'll be getting the actual eye wall in about half an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is unfortunately true, and I've been looking at some of the radar imagery, some of the velocities, and they're higher up, but I'm still seeing things even up to 112 knots. And again, that's up in the atmosphere. I just heard a bang. I don't know what that was. It might have been a transformer a long way away. So yeah, it will be, again, it's gotten worse, and it will get worse yet.
All right, Nelson, check in with us whenever you can, but that's the situation in New Orleans right now, and please break in if anything does happen, because very important to document that as well right now, not just for ourselves, but for people watching who may need either reassurance or more information on the ground. Going back to Isaac's webcam showing Grand Isle, conditions there still really blowing, and looks like the winds are even stronger actually, even though almost a whiteout.
It's a very substantial, very dangerous situation down in Grand Isle.
I'm looking at radar right now, and according to radar, they're still looks like they're in the eye wall now. Maybe it's slightly more in the eye wall because this is in the southwest Grand Isle. Keep in mind here, so it's going to be getting some of the stronger winds here this hurricane has to offer, and You can see it, they're still shaking there. And I do note in the center of your screen there where that little sand dune is. It looks like parts of the sand dune have been eroded away there, but it looks a bit on the camera there from earlier, earlier.
And this is show everything that's going on here. The many panel display. It used to be a 4-panel, but so much stuff's going on that we've just got everything up here. We've still got that tornado warning that's in effect in the Florida Panhandle, northwest of Pensacola. That's still going at this time. What will happen to Zeta once it passes out of the northeast is a question from Clicky Clips.
Be absorbed by a frontal system, and the remnants of it will move off across the North Atlantic.
Let's go to what
right
Samuel's
now,
looking at whilst we
in the
discuss that.
landfall area, we're hearing reports from emergency management via a local news station that there have been multiple building collapses.
Not good, to say the least.
Especially in Golden Meadow and Galliano.
It's
and
bad.
Golden Meadow was where we had those high Category 1 hurricane conditions reported earlier.
Those two places, they are probably going to come out of this the worst out of anywhere, given the trajectory of the storm. Just take a look again, zoom right in, and they will be in the eye right now. Golden Meadow, Galliano, La Rose, all in the eye right now.
More structural impacts that are going on. I have a screenshot up showing the power outage map for the country right now. And I can delve into more detail on that as soon as you're ready for that.
Go.
So, this is just a nationwide shot. Texas and Oklahoma both have very substantial power outages, particularly Oklahoma, where about 20% of the states lost power.
Why?
Because of the cold front that's
The cold.
sweeping in. Not the cold, the cold fronts brought storm activity. There's a snowstorm out in the Rockies. It's problematic here. But coming into Louisiana in particular, these numbers are going to skyrocket as we come through into tonight. But already, Terrebonne County here has about a quarter of its customers without power. And keep in mind that customers don't relate to a raw number of people. Those are the number of households or buildings that have lost power. So you usually take this number and at minimum double or triple it to get the actual number of people that are being impacted by these outages. But you can see in particular multiple areas along the southeastern coast where the storm has just made landfall already have at least 10% of customers reported to not have power. Not all the way into New Orleans yet, but we're going to get there in pretty short order. That's going to be right here. We're already over 3,000 customers don't have power. And that number is probably going to continue to rise pretty rapidly, as Nelson stated recently as well. So it would not be surprising at all to see a majority of this area lit up in bright red as we get towards the night hours into tomorrow morning, which would represent over 60% of total customers, which would be, at least for New Orleans, for example, over 100,000 customers without power.
Nelson stated just now in the chat that the power is now out across the street from him.
Across the street?
From him, that the power is out.
So you'll almost certainly see these numbers continue to rise at a increasingly dramatic pace as the storm continues to move further inland. The impacts for more populated areas continue to worsen, and the ability to report that information trickles in over time at updates. This will really only go up from here. Already very substantial power outages in Terrebonne County in particular, as well as St. Bernard County. Those are going to start coming into the even more populated areas very shortly.
We expect the National Hurricane Center will update with an hourly advisory very shortly. It's 1 minute to. But obviously the news, if you've just joined us, is that Hurricane Zeta has made landfall in Louisiana, southeastern Louisiana. It does appear as though the eye will pass extremely close to the city of New Orleans. Within 10 miles is the latest estimate. And that will occur in about an hour or so, a little bit more. So that's where we're at right now. If you've got any comments or questions for us whilst we're on the air, we'll do our best to reply to those. More questions here. Is multiple November storms likely this season? I think the answer is yes on that one.
Not often you can say that.
What happened with Typhoon Malawi? That is still active as a tropical storm moving inland over Laos and into Thailand after making a Category 3 landfall yesterday in Vietnam. Another terrible situation going on there on the opposite side of the world. And the Philippines in for another tropical storm, typhoon impact this weekend, which we'll no doubt be covering once Zeta dies off a little bit more.
I know it wasn't specifically asked in chat right now, and if anyone has questions, they can start their message with @Force13 and text. It lights up in a bright orange. But that radar image of it was just up right before this. You can take a good look at it. New Orleans proper is really about to enter the northern eye wall right now.
Let's zoom in.
It really looks like, in pretty short order, based on the storm's path, they're going to get straight into the northern or northwestern eye wall of this system rather than just getting by the western part. So the city itself, and that's actually east of north right now, could be getting very substantial impacts. Of course, hurricane force sustained winds are going to be on that side, probably still up at Category 2 intensity, maybe weakening slightly by the time it really fully gets there. But the pace this storm is moving, the 6-hour average of 24 miles an hour, and it's faster recently, means that there's less time for the storm to have those actual sustained wind speeds drop off before it reaches, say, a high population center that's typically a bit further inland like New Orleans. So that raises the risk of more substantial hurricane force sustained winds at a bit of a higher strength that you'd normally see to actually impact the city proper rather than just the coastal areas and suburban areas south of New Orleans.
Some real bad stuff on the way shortly. Let me just try and give you a time frame on that, if possible. And as soon as I want it to load the time progression, it doesn't. Well, there's a frame from earlier, so that was at 10 minutes to the hour, and this is now. So, yeah, you're talking 15 minutes probably. National Hurricane Center put out their update at 5 p.m. Central Time. The eye wall of Zeta approaching New Orleans with strong winds, life-threatening surge occurring near the coast. And this is what they're saying: don't venture outside when the calm eye of the hurricane passes over, as dangerous winds will return very quickly when the eye moves away. Stronger winds, especially in gusts, are likely on high-rise buildings. So that is pretty much a message to New Orleans there, because I imagine large population center, there's going to be some people that will want to venture out in the eye. Well, that's not a very good idea, but that's if the eye indeed passes over the city, but we'll see.
Have we gone over the new 5 p.m. update?
I'm just halfway through it here. An unofficial weather station in Golden Meadow just reported sustained winds of 94 miles per hour and a gust to 110 miles per hour there. Wind gust to 52 miles per hour recently reported at Homer, Louisiana, and a wind gust to 53 was reported at New Orleans Lakefront Airport. So right now they're still giving it 110 mile per hour winds, a pressure of 972 millibars. And back to you, Isaac, with the webcam there. How's that been developing?
Well, I've noticed the surge seems to be lowering here, but the winds certainly are still easily there. The waves not going up as high as they used to be, and also I'm noting that the palm tree to the right of your screen looks like it's perhaps leaning more toward the left here with the winds. So we may capture it fall down here, depending on how strong that root system is where it's at. But like I said,
I'm not sure that's the reason, Isaac. I think it's the direction of the wind that's doing that.
Yeah, the winds, I mean.
I don't think it's going to fall down. I think it's just that it was blowing the other way earlier.
Well, it was off camera, but I mean, we'll see here. But the surge seems to be lowering here for the most part. Wind's still there, of course, but the surge seems to be lowering a little bit here as they start to exit the eye wall of Hurricane Zeta.
But remarkable imagery from that particular webcam, and I get the feeling we'll be seeing something similar in New Orleans pretty soon. About 15 minutes until the eye wall reaches the city of New Orleans, so stay tuned on that, because things are going to get pretty nasty over there by the looks of things, and we'll see if we can get hold of Nelson. Obviously he's got other priorities, but if we can snag him just for a couple of moments during this hour, we'll do our best to do just that. Current warnings then. To reiterate those warnings that from the National Hurricane Center, they haven't changed in a little while now, but just to make everyone aware of that, storm surge warning remains in effect for the mouth of the I was going to get that right, and I've done it wrong this time. Okay, great. Atchafalaya River to Navarre, Florida, and Lake Bourne, Lake Pontchartrain, Pensacola Bay, and Mobile Bay. Hurricane warning for Morgan City to the Mississippi-Alabama border, Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Maurepas, and metropolitan New Orleans. That's a hurricane warning. Tropical storm warning for the Mississippi-Alabama border to Walton Bay County line, Florida. And as said, still 110 miles per hour. Surge, mouth of the Pearl River to the Mississippi-Alabama border, is now expected to get the worst. That's 7 to 11 feet for that area. The Mississippi-Alabama border to Dauphin Island, 6 to 9 feet. The location here, you can see at Grand Isle, also at 6 to 9 feet there.
And I don't know if, because I'm pretty sure the National Hurricane Center and other things just do the coastal warnings. What reading those off doesn't highlight fully is that there are inland tropical storm warnings in association with this system through more than half of Alabama, the southern quarter of Mississippi, into northern Georgia. I'm pretty sure that actually includes the city of Atlanta directly. So Atlanta's under tropical storm warning. Parts of northwestern South Carolina, portions of North Carolina, very corner areas in Tennessee, and even now, they actually extended it further north. Parts of southwestern Virginia are actually under tropical storm warnings ahead of this storm. So even though we have, the core hurricane warnings and coastal warnings with this system pushing inland, there are tropical storm warnings with the expectations for tropical storm conditions, be that mainly tropical storm sustained winds, not necessarily gargantuan rainfall totals, but some totals with the risk of flash flooding and localized creek and river flooding, going all the way inland from where this system is right now up into Virginia, with other flood-related watches and warnings all the way up into New Jersey. So this is a multi-day threat right now, heading further inland, and that doesn't even include the fact that right now, at least, we're about to see a very large population center in New Orleans get into the absolute worst of this system.
Indeed. Preparations haven't been made. Please rush them to completion if you live in that, or in Mississippi even, as once it passes by New Orleans, the worst of the weather will then be into Mississippi, which will include a high storm surge of 7 to 11 feet.
So all eyes on New Orleans really at this point, although there's plenty of other places that are getting bad conditions, places like Raceland, moving up towards the northeast there, towards New Orleans, all along that corridor actually. Looks like it's getting some serious conditions. New Orleans literally about to get the eye wall in within the next 10 minutes here. And again, a close-up on that radar once more, which is updating live.
I think it well should be mentioned that because this storm is moving so fast that the wind isn't going to die down quick enough when it goes to inland, so when it goes along. So when you have traffic along the I-10 corridor and then further inland, there may be people in there who hasn't had the sufficient warning or any warning at all and will be out traveling. So if you are planning to travel, I would put those plans at hold if you are in the direct path of the storm, especially if you're driving a high-sided vehicle such as an articulated lorry or RV, as they will be prone to rolling over in these hurricane force winds.
We saw that during, was it Delta?
Yeah.
That they were going along these high bridges when the hurricane was moving in.
Yeah, and there was quite a few trucks that rolled over. And obviously because of that, those are road traffic collisions, and that you can obviously very seriously get hurt or even die to it. So if you're planning to travel within the path of the system, I would put those plans on hold.
And that's not including the threat of trees falling onto vehicles.
Indeed.
Isaac, what are we looking at here? Where's this?
This is in Houma, Louisiana. There you can see a police officer, I'm assuming, going through the streets to make sure everybody's inside and safe right now. And this is in Houma, Louisiana. They're not going to get the worst this hurricane has to offer here, but you can see the conditions right now are still pretty bad.
They are actually, they're literally on the point where the storm's starting to move away from them now rather than getting closer, so conditions will start to get better here soon.
Yeah,
At
and
this
that's
location.
yeah. I'm also noticing that on radar, it looks as if the eye might be passing just to the south of New Orleans. It's quite possible, but it still looks like the New Orleans. There's still a good chance the New Orleans could potentially get the worst of the winds, but the eye looks like it's set to pass just to the southeast of the radar.
I'm still
New
not
Orleans.
convinced that they're starting to get it right now, by the way. There's a new radar frame. So one part of the eye wall there looks like it's just gone through. The other worst part of it is still just to the south, probably 5 minutes out now. If you've got any comments or questions for us whilst we're on the air, we're happy to take them on, even during this time, because we feel that it's necessary to do that. Without such, it's better to take people's questions on the air live. It does more of a service, in my opinion, but there we are.
Something that I've become aware of, not related to Zeta, but something that will be happening in the coming days, is that there's a new tropical storm in the West Pac, and that's likely to impact the Philippines as a major typhoon, if not a super typhoon.
Yeah, I think things are looking bad over there as well.
HWRF wants a Category 5 peak out of that.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, but it looks like we'll be back live in a few days with that system.
No doubt. What do we think the sustained winds and gusts will be in Slidell? Anyone have any thoughts to offer about that? Hurricane gusts, perhaps?
Where exactly?
Slidell, Louisiana? On the other side of Lake Pontchartrain?
Certainly hurricane force gusts. Depends how far west or east it moves, if it gets
Yeah,
the
may even be
weakening
sustained.
eye wall.
I mean, they're under a hurricane warning right now, so it depends on, does this track deviate enough to the west to where they barely miss hurricane force sustained winds? But you can actually see Slidell because that's where the radar is from directly. Take the current track; they're still going to likely be close enough to get clipped by at least minimum high-end tropical storm force winds. More likely than not, minimal hurricane force winds because of the pace the storm is moving at. And, the difference between those two is little enough to that anyone there shouldn't be taking their final preparations or acting right now in any different manner.
More questions here. Do we think that some levees in New Orleans could be overtopped, given that storm surge that could be 11 feet in parts of Mississippi? What do you think?
The National Hurricane Center did note that non-federal levees outside of the hurricane preparedness system could be overtopped. So the ones that aren't covered by the federal scheme certainly are at risk of being breached.
And again, latest on the radar there, the eye drawing ever closer. I think New Orleans probably will get part of the eye. No other tornado warnings that are out just now. There was one in the Florida Panhandle, northwest of Pensacola, not so long ago, but that has disappeared. No others at this time, but large area of tornado watches. But definitely look out for tornadoes in those areas. Other questions that we've received: how strong will Goni get? Let's just cross over there briefly. I understand that most of the focus is on Zeta, rightly so, but we do have other systems around the world. In the Western Pacific, we've got Tropical Storm Goni there, which is at the center of your picture. That's the Western Pacific Basin, and that will be heading towards the Philippines in the next 4 or 5 days. Expected to make landfall probably on Sunday. And down there, the bottom right hand of that screen there, another area of interest that could become a really significant typhoon. So things to watch over there in the Western Pacific. We had a question about whether the East Pacific was still dead. The answer is yes, at least for a few more days. Rumblings that there could be a significant hurricane or tropical storm there next week, so keep watching the Eastern Pacific, and that will probably be the last hurrah of the Eastern Pacific hurricane season, perhaps. But the Atlantic is pledging to keep going, because that area there, the disturbance over the Lesser Antilles, could be part of what becomes that next area near the Central America that could develop next week. But if you've just joined us, the main news right now is that Hurricane Zeta has made landfall in Louisiana. It did so at about, how long ago was it now? And I'm not sure why we don't have that imagery. I'm losing track of time. It was about half an hour ago? Something like that. And now clearly moving inland, very close to New Orleans at this point. And let's just get a zoom in on this again. There we are. Look, the worst part of the eye wall appears to be moving over New Orleans right now. Of course, Nelson's on the ground over there, and if we get to hear from him at any point, we'll put him straight to air. But at the moment we don't have him right now. He may be without power. He reported last that across the street was without power. But Sam is still showing us what it looks like over there, I think.
Yes, I am. I am showing
that camera is not working now. It
area
seems-
of concern. I'm showing the area of concern.
That does look
is-
static, I've got to say, yeah.
Yeah, that camera's not on. That's finished.
Maybe they've not. Maybe they've lost power as well.
Yeah, an update on the power
Look at this
outages as well.
Yeah, if you could just, I'll see if I can. Oh no, it's still live.
Are you
But
sure?
it looks like. Yeah.
Oh, it
is still
I
live.
wanna
I
make
saw it
sure
come
that my
back on for
screen
him.
is shared.
Oh, okay. Well, Strat, go ahead.
Yeah, just an update on the power outages really quick as well. Those power outages in New Orleans and Orleans County in particular are starting to rise at a very sharp pace. Last time we checked in just a few minutes ago, they were at 3,000 customers without power. Now they're over 14,000. Jefferson
Gosh.
County, which before was under 5,000 customers without power, is now over 22,000 customers without power. So the amount of power outages in these two most populated counties right here, Jefferson County and Orleans County, are rapidly picking up as Zeta moves over them right now.
Yep, and I do now have the cameras live in the Bourbon Street Mardi Gras area, and there's even audio, and the winds are really starting to pick up in this area, as well as the rain. And
Yeah, well, this
both of
may
these-
well be the worst part of the storm that's moving through right now. You know, possibly.
actually look that bad, but it's probably not going to be as bad in the center where it's more protected than outside of it, where the conditions are probably worse.
I'm
we have a-
hearing reports from a local news station that a gust of 136 miles per hour has been reported in Lafourche Parish.
Well, that's a
And-
development.
And on top of that as well, Nelson's in the chat. He says he's in the eyewall right now, but he still has power, which is something that, as we know earlier, his neighbors don't have anymore, and that many people around him are going to be starting to lose very quickly if they haven't lost it already.
So that's latest from Nelson there. He's sending in sparse messages, isn't he?
Yeah, they're definitely going to be more sparse at this point, just because, can't be outside, using devices that are going to end up, draining power away and stuff in a way that you can't be having them actively charged up in case, power goes out, which, considering we're seeing the eyewall starting to go over New Orleans proper right now, is more likely than not for many people in the city.
Isaac, what are we looking at now?
This is a look at Terry Parkway on US 90B, just south of downtown New Orleans, right now in Louisiana. You can see, oh, of course, that camera went down. Here's a look at another one here. This is also south of New Orleans here. Looking at, again, US 90 here, just south of Louisiana. People still, unfortunately, on the roads here when they should be inside, hunkering down for this hurricane here as it approaches.
Yep, still a bit of traffic out there. No high-sided vehicles, thankfully.
Yeah, but I think that's when it gets to the interstate, I-10. There may well be, and some very bad hurricane conditions will pass over it.
And here's a look again at Grand Isle right now.
Yeah, much calmer there now.
You can actually see what's going on now.
The worst of it seems to have passed Grand Isle.
Just
Yep,
wonder
yep.
what it looks like off shot around that camera.
If you take a wide shot of the system, so I don't know if you can cut to satellite imagery really quickly, something you're going to notice now, though, is that as this system interacts with this trough more, this area of low pressure that's, actually caused pretty significant power outages to areas in Texas and Oklahoma, that as they interact more, that south side is going to become increasingly bare as more and more dry air comes in, let alone just it not being over warm sea surface temperatures anymore. So already you're seeing the northwestern side where strongest convection typically rotates to and stays when you have these systems move inland and interact with troughs. The coldest cloud tops are already on that northwestern quadrant, and the southern side is starting to let up a little bit.
Only a little bit.
More importantly, though, you can get a tell that those cloud tops are going to be impacted by shear. You see them getting ripped away way to the north of the center now, extending well into the southeast, into the Carolinas, while on the south side, in the next 2 hours at most, you'll have every single cloud top, for the most part, that's above minus 40 degrees, already being moving inland.
I was just getting that visible imagery there as well. Not fit to the screen there, but never mind. That's how it's been progressing on visible imagery, and you can see that effect a little bit better there. What are our opinions on the disturbance in the Atlantic? Is a question from Angelo Duran.
It's forming from a tropical wave interacting with localized low pressure systems coming out of the tropics. Similar genesis to how Delta formed. Very favourable environment, already gaining model support. Can't rule out a major landfall.
So according to radar indications, it looks like the worst band is just about to clear New Orleans Central. I-10 in that right now. Nelson in that right now still. There's another one coming in as well behind it, which doesn't look quite as bad, but still could cause problems as the center of the hurricane draws very near. If we're going to place the center of the eye somewhere, then well, there's the quite clear the extent of the eye, and the center of it would appear to be over there, over Little Lake. So Levee inside the eye right now, and probably will get the center of the eye. I still can't see New Orleans not getting the eye. I think the eye will pass over at least part of the city of New Orleans.
And I would note that, this is a pretty significant shift in expectations for where the center of the system would pass from even this morning. The initial expectations, and even at the more recent cones at 10 a.m. we're saying that this system would move to the east of New Orleans, not by a particularly small margin. They're expecting a much more bold reemergence into Lake Pontchartrain before moving into Mississippi. At this rate, at least, though, it looks like much more direct landfall on New Orleans is set, or not landfall, but a crossover of New Orleans is set to occur.
Again, if you have any more questions for us whilst we're on the air, now is a great time to put that in. A few people asking about the Atlantic disturbance more than anything, but that's something that we'll be watching towards the end of this week into next week. But we're just waiting to hear any word from the people that we know down there in New Orleans, Nelson in particular, whether he's got any more information, not just now. But Isaac, you have another view.
Yes, this is from just southeast across the Mississippi River of downtown New Orleans, and you can see the conditions start to deteriorate here. Earlier saw cops patrolling the street here, and a few people just, I guess, trying to sightsee here before the eye wall comes in, which they shouldn't be doing. On this camera here, the other camera I was showing you, they moved it towards like a pole, so it's looking at a pole right now, not the street.
So that's another live view right now, and very wet. That's about as much as we could see there, really.
Yeah, it's a really low resolution camera, at least from what I'm seeing here, and yeah, as it turns to night here.
Do you think that the next storm could become a major hurricane like the GFS parallel predicts, or is that model out to sea?
Well, I mean, I think they're talking about the area of interest as a 20% chance of development in the next 5 days. I think the most important thing to do is just see if those odds go up first and track it for development, because for all we know, it could still just barely develop, if at all, and then just plow into Central America as a area of interest, bringing significant rainfall totals, or as a weak tropical storm. I know the GFS parallel is saying a stronger storm this morning with the 6Z run, but to date, at least, that's the only specific model run I'm aware of that's come out with such a solution. So I do think if you're talking about that particular system, it's best just to watch it and see if the odds for development go up before trying to pin down anything for potential intensity.
Now here we go, look at this. Building back in is the significant rainfall there on the very inside of the innermost eye wall, and that's building back in there on the radar imagery there. It may have always been there, but just obscured from the radar site. So New Orleans about to get its final slam on the approaching on the first part of the eye wall before reaching the eye, and looks like on that schedule that the eye will arrive in about 25 minutes maximum, maybe a little bit less, until New Orleans. It looks pretty sure at this point that they'll get the eye.
Wow.
When will the Gulf of Mexico cool off enough for us to stop worrying? That's the question right now.
Mid-November.
I think there's not really a particularly clear answer yet, just because long-range models do try to indicate further development right now in the Western Caribbean or near the Gulf of Mexico. But hopefully, for the sake of land, at least some of the runs happen. I'm not saying anything will happen. It's past the reliable 5-day window. But hopefully, for land areas at least, we get to the point in the season in short order where if we're going to see more storms, they're going to be weird subtropical developments out in the open North Atlantic that are more shipping hazards than any actual risk to land.
Something that I'm seeing is that there's a storm chaser who's positioned himself a little southeast of Galliano, and he has reported a pressure of 969.5 millibars inside the eye of the storm.
Very believable.
Based on the extrapolated sea surface pressures that we're seeing from Recon right before landfall and the actual landfall pressure of 970, not surprising at all to see some minor variance from that.
And as we zoom out on the radar again, looking out for potential water spouts on the eastern side of the storm there. You can see the little blow-ups of oranges off the coast of Mississippi and Alabama there. East of Biloxi, by the looks of things, you could see some water spouts.
Yeah, and just an update as well on those power outages. Those are really continuing to ramp up in numbers. Now the state of Louisiana has over 100,000 customers without power in total. Jefferson County, which less than an hour ago had less than 5,000 customers without power, is now over 38,000 customers confirmed without power. Orleans County, or I'm sorry, that's over 34,000 for them. Orleans County, which less than an hour ago had under 3,000 customers confirmed without power, now has over 38,000 customers confirmed without power. As a reference point, that's near 20%, 15 to 20% of total customers without power for both of those counties. We're only going to see those numbers rise up even further as the storm progresses.
Nelson's back on the line. Nelson? Is he ready for us?
Nathan, hello. Yes, hi. It is very dangerous out right now. I don't know if you can see my shed has had its roof pulled off of it completely. We are in the eye wall right now, and I'm trying to keep myself as sheltered as possible as I do this, leaning against my house. You can see this was where my weather station was, but that was blown down in a massively ferocious gust just a few minutes ago. I will have to go check on that shed and see what is happening, but it is pouring down buckets, and I'm trying to shield from the wind. You can see debris in the air.
Debris everywhere.
And it is just, there are bangs and crashes that you know are not transformers blowing right now. They are construction materials, parts of buildings being thrown into other buildings.
That's pretty incredible right now. That is the worst part of the storm that's moving through your area right now, Nelson, and it probably will continue for another 10 minutes or so.
Yes, and then the other side.
And then the other side.
Thankful. It's very disconcerting out here. I'm not going to lie to you, Nathan. And again, sorry if the audio is poor, but this is the only way to do it at the moment. I am waiting for a branch on that tree over there to blow down. It's going.
Oh, I think we've just lost his feed.
Very abruptly as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
Oh, he's coming back. I think it might just be signal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be signal issues right now at least.
Well, he's muted. What's going on?
Yeah, we've got little bits of Nelson there, just little bits of signal blowing through.
Either
It's
way,
possible that the winds are knocking on damaging the cell towers.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
clearly a serious situation that's going on there in the whole New Orleans wider area. Nelson, can you hear us?
Signal.
Nope, he's still struggling with
Well, I'm happy that he's able to be in a generally safe location and remain safe during this. Of course, we saw some of the things he's doing to take precautions earlier, but during parts of what he's showing us, you could see actual, debris
Yeah.
floating around a little bit just because the wind was carrying it.
Strat,
Go ahead,
We hear
Nelson.
Yep.
you.
can you hear me?
We've
Yeah.
got you again.
Yes.
Got you.
Yeah, I just there is a lot of debris, and I'm sorry, I know the signal cut out there. That was me losing fiber optic internet connectivity. So that's not satellite, that's not a cable running anywhere. That is fiber optic internet that is now gone.
Oh.
Well, there we go.
Nelson, if you could still hear me, how high would you estimate the winds are right now to your location if you had to get a rough estimate here?
Isaac, I'd say that they are probably around 55, 60 miles an hour. Ooh, that was a gust. It almost took the phone out of my hand. It's hard to measure. At least hurricane strength, obviously, but gusts that have nearly knocked me off my feet, and I'm on a protected porch.
Incredible
That's
pictures you're
insane.
sending us.
Incredible.
One of the unfortunate things that despite, the total rainfall levels for certain areas going to be lower because the system's moving so quickly, means that areas like New Orleans, where Nelson is right now, that are, at least a dozen or so plus miles inland from where the storm first made landfall, I think it's a bit more than that actually, are still able to get sustained winds near the peak of what the storm was at when it was first coming on shore, just because the storm hasn't had much time to really begin winding down and weakening yet. So, sincerely hope that Nelson's able to stay as safe as possible as the storm continues to pass through. Looking at the radar right now, the northeastern eye wall and northern eye wall are crossing
The eye's
straight
nearly
over New
there.
Orleans right now.
That
Yeah.
is nearly over New Orleans.
And it's still... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we could come back to this feed maybe in like 15, 20 minutes or so, and there could be very little wind or rain at all based on the current path if the eye passes straight over New Orleans.
Nelson, you're out back now, are you?
Yes, I am. I am checking on my shed. Sorry, it's dark. We can see and hear that because the roof is torn off, we
We're
are
struggling.
having water intrusion.
We're seeing that.
Look at the tide. If you get up high enough, you can see that's because...
We're struggling with your signal, Nelson. In fact, he's just dropped off completely. So, obviously, serious conditions going on there, and we've got a lot of perspective from him just then. So we thank Nelson for doing that for us. Very important that he stays safe. The eye looks to be about to reach New Orleans at this point. We're probably minutes away here.
It still boggles my mind right now to see people still traveling on the roads right now in the eye wall of a high-end Category 2 hurricane here. It's just absurd here. Nobody should be outside right now. As you saw in Nelson's live feed there, it doesn't take, high-end major hurricane to cause damage to buildings here, and we saw that with this hurricane already here. Please take this hurricane seriously here. If there's any good news is that the storm is moving pretty fast here. It's moving, last I heard, it was moving at northeast at 22 miles per hour, so it's going to be moving pretty fast. But of course, the bad thing about that is that it's going to give you less and less time here to prepare for it. Everyone prepared for it already in other parts of Louisiana here and Mississippi. So just please take this hurricane seriously here. We've showed you live pictures from Nelson, from other parts of Louisiana here. This is a serious hurricane here, no matter how you slice it here. And I really hope everybody's staying safe and going to shelter at this point, if they're not in it right now.
Yeah,
Well, they certainly
just
should
another, and just another note on that too, because of how quickly it's moving. As of 5 p.m. Eastern, or not Eastern Central, it had already been inland for at least 30 minutes at that point. National Hurricane Center had a bit of a pressure rise to 972 millibars, but those winds were still at 110 miles an hour. So those haven't really begun to come down yet. even though we're already inland a good bit. So, and because those strongest winds are on the northern portion of the system right now, that means New Orleans Metro, the city itself, as well, will be getting, strong hurricane force sustained winds. And those are also probably going to be moving into Mississippi as well, pretty quickly after passing New Orleans, too.
Let's see if we've got more questions at this point. I don't think so just now. Well, what do we cover once the Atlantic hurricane season is over? Well, that's the question that we've received. 30% of worldwide activity happens in the southern hemisphere. That's usually between November and May, so we're still a little bit busy. But, well, things usually calm down. We'd love a break right now. We've had 27 tropical storms and a bunch of hurricanes within that 27 in the Atlantic Ocean this year. The average in a season is 12, and we've had 27.
So that's
And we've
well
seen
over
5 continental US landfalls from hurricanes, which ties the record set in 1886 and then later tied in 1985.
That doesn't even go over the fact that, right now at least, after Zeta, exits the mid-Atlantic in less than 2 days, the Atlantic might be quieter for at most a couple days to a week, but even so, a lot of activity happens outside the Atlantic as well. Right now, at least, the JTWC has newly formed Tropical Storm Goni in the Philippine Sea, projected to potentially make landfall at least 105 knots, which is 120 miles an hour. That would be at least a Category 3 landfall near Manila in the Philippines. So we might have a little bit of time to focus elsewhere, but that time's going to be taken covering other potentially dangerous systems.
Let's just check the radar here. There's been a new blow-up on the southeastern side of the eye wall. You can see how that just appeared, really. Again, it could have been a trick of the radar that it might have always been there, but nonetheless, it is there, so that's another area that's going to be swirling around now. But New Orleans literally just on the edge of the eye now. Winds should be slowly abating as the eye appears. But as the National Hurricane Center said, under no circumstances go out during the passage of the storm's eye. Many people have been caught out by that over the years. You don't want to be a statistic.
I also want
Especially with the storm moving that fast.
Yeah, and with speaking of that, we are starting to see some damage, some storm damage out of the New Orleans metro area. One of our Discord members in the Force 13 Discord server posted a couple of photos. This person is in New Orleans, and they have witnessed a fallen tree due to the strong winds that's impacting that area.
Can you just remind us again where your webcam is right now, Isaac?
This is just southeast of Louisiana here. Power just went out there. As you see in that camera.
Okay.
Power just went out. Camera's still up, but the power is out on that camera now.
Southeast of New Orleans, that?
Yeah, just southeast across the Mississippi River from New Orleans here. The power went out. Looks like it's back up in some spotty areas, but for the most part, it's out. Fortunately, this camera is still up here. And again, you can see the description. This is on US 90 here, just to the southeast of downtown New Orleans here, and this is the current conditions right now.
That camera should enter the eye within minutes, so we might want to keep it on there for a little while here.
And in addition, we are also seeing some more reports, more hurricane reports out of the New Orleans area as well, including the French Quarter. They're around 5:30 shows a down tree on Decatur Street in the French Quarter, and in eastern New Orleans, we're seeing weather station was reporting 69 miles an hour sustained, with gusts of over 80 miles an hour.
Yep, very strong winds blowing through. it is suggesting to me that most of the worst part of the first half of this storm has moved over New Orleans now as the power gets restored by the looks of things. But still very inclement conditions, as you can see. The images don't lie. But the eye should be entering this area very shortly.
Yeah, hopefully it holds on here. Most of the cameras in this region, with the exception of about 3 of them, are down here due to the power outages that I was describing to you a few minutes here. And again, I still can't. It boggles my mind to see people still out and about on the roads here in this Category 2 hurricane. It's a dangerous situation. Nobody should be out there. The police have been, out and about before the eye wall came in, trying to get people off the streets, I imagine here. But still, some people are still on the streets, not
most
taking
people
advice.
are off the streets, though.
Yeah.
And you
can see it occasionally there. Good.
No, just watching the light pylons wobbling there. So still very windy conditions, it would seem.
Looks like it just went down. Oh, it's back. And the connection's going to be spotty with this camera here. It's going to go in and out a lot. They've just lost it again here. Let's go back to the Grand Isle camera here.
That's somehow still going, my goodness.
Yeah, it's been it went through the eye wall of this hurricane and still is made it out, and you can see the conditions on the back side of the hurricane. They're not in the eye wall right now, so they're not going to get the worst of the hurricane anymore.
So they're pretty much done. It's who knows what's off camera around there.
Yeah,
from
I
what I
think
saw earlier.
The damage.
I saw it swaying about.
Yeah, I imagine there's going to be a lot of beach erosion here from this hurricane. There's the camera again. We got it back.
Seems to be cables dangling now.
Yeah,
it's been like that the whole time.
Yeah, this is on a tower here, and they pan. This one haven't panned around, but the other one, power went out again.
Lost power again.
Yeah, the power's going to be coming in and out here a lot. So I don't guarantee that this camera's going to stay up the entire duration of this hurricane. But it'll be nice to see what it's like in the eye of this hurricane when it gets into it soon.
And they are on the very edge of the eye right now, so any time you might see things start to clear up a little bit. No guarantee that that will happen, because it could be a cloud-filled eye at this point.
Mm-hmm. And I know with like Laura, of course this is not the same magnitude Laura was, but with Laura, I remember Storm Chasers reporting even on the outer edges of the eye, when they were in the clear of it, they were still getting really strong Category 4 force winds. So just because you get in the eye of the storm does not mean you need to go outside and assess damage. This is still a fast-moving hurricane here, so you're not going to have much time here to go out and survey.
Really like to know what reason these people have to just pick the time that the eye wall's moving through to go and drive somewhere.
I know, it's astonishing how I'm seeing moving vehicles in the middle of a high-end Category 2. It's
people driving around in the eye of Hurricane Michael, but that was because they were trying to get to relatives who needed to be evacuated from their homes.
This may well be the same thing.
Yeah.
But then again, there hasn't been much warning for this, at least for the local residents. There hasn't been
And certainly no one was expecting a high-end Category 2 or Category 3 to be making landfall sooner than expected.
Yeah.
That's why.
With regards to the Category 2, Category 3 situation, we've heard that there may have been a ship report that supports sustained Category 3 winds at the surface.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
That'd need to be verified and confirmed to make sure there wasn't any issues with the equipment, but if it is confirmed, that would be categoric evidence for major hurricane.
Well then, you heard it here first. If they upgrade it to Category 3 in post-analysis, you know why.
I think it's just incredible, taking a step back here, how this entire situation progressed here. At first, the National Hurricane Center thought, maybe something might try to form in the Caribbean here, and then it went to this is probably not going to form. then it started to ramp back up again, and they were like, this is going to form. Then, of course, we got Zeta, Tropical Storm Zeta, then Hurricane Zeta as it made landfall over the Yucatan, weakened back down to a tropical storm as it went over the Yucatan and back over the Gulf of Mexico. And here we are right now looking at a high-end 110 mile per hour Category 2 hurricane over Louisiana here.
Which has managed to intensify at least 40 knots over the Gulf of Mexico in late October.
Truly incredible.
Truly incredible.
And a good 10 to 15 knots of that happened over 26 degrees sea surface temperatures.
Which just goes to show that sea surface temperatures aren't everything when extratropical factors are involved.
They certainly aren't. We've discovered that plenty of times in the last 5 years.
If you needed any more convincing, this should have done it.
And I believe the strongest hurricane besides this that happened later in the year in recorded history was Hurricane Kate in 1985. That peaked as 120 mile per hour Cat 3 as it neared landfall in Florida. This, of course, is making landfall, or made landfall, as I actually say, in Louisiana here. So
so that was actually over the loop current when it was making its Category 3 peak, and it was certainly a lot slower in intensification than Zeta has been.
Exactly. I'm sure the storm's going to be studied in the years to come here, but still, serious storm here, and just like I said, stay indoors. You saw, live feed from Grand Isle, and then from, of course, Nelson, providing us, that live information, just to be taking the storm seriously here, and to stay sheltered till the storm passes. Again, this is kind of like a double-edged sword here, and one in the fact how it's feared that this storm is moving really fast here. She's not going to be getting those hurricane force winds for a long duration of time, but of course bad because since it's moving fast, you have really a low amount of lead time here ahead of this system if you're still trying to finish really last-minute preparations.
The question has just come through. Do we think the eye will go over Lake Pontchartrain? Well, at least part of it will at this point. There is a small chance the whole of the eye, or, well, the centre of the eye could pass over the lake. I'm not sure at this point. It's still moving further west than anticipated. This was supposed to pass New Orleans 20 miles east. As it happens, or more, it looks like the centre of the eye will be only about 5 miles east of New Orleans.
And if you want kind of a reference to that and a reason as to why, some of that really comes down to minute things such as the angle that this trough is picking it up at. Slight alterations in the angle of that can mean, in pretty short order, from a 6-hour forecast ago, a deviation 15 miles off to the west, which, typically doesn't happen that often within such a substantial time frame. But the unfortunate thing is that when such a thing like that happens, because of certain circumstances, like the angle of direction that a system that's moving the storm picks it up at, then you have, New Orleans proper, the city, the highest population density of the state of Louisiana, move from getting barely clipped by the western eye wall from the initial forecast to being right in the thick of the northern eye wall where the strongest convection is.
Yeah, not good at all. It doesn't look like there's any flooding at that location, Isaac. A lot of rainfall there, though.
I'm just trying to find better cameras here around the area, and of course most of them are down here, but I'm just looking.
We'll let you go and find one of those then whilst we pan back to the radar imagery.
Thank you.
Once again, you can see there that the worst part of the hurricane looks like it's moved through New Orleans, but again, when you look at that camera, it still shows that conditions are pretty bad. Nelson is posting in our comments section. He was on the air not so long ago.
What was he saying specifically right now?
He was just answering one of the questions that we've already answered, that it's headed for Slidell once it clears Nelson's place, the eye of the storm.
Nelson was saying that remarkably the power's still on.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Not all of New Orleans has lost power yet, but an increasing margin is going to continue to do so. I'll take a look at the power outage
there's
map to see if there's
just
any
drive
new
along
updates.
traffic.
There's actually a new update on the power outage map. I'll screen share this very quickly for you, actually.
We're just looking at Isaac's imagery here. Where's this?
This is a little bit northwest of the other camera showing. I believe it is near northwestern part of New Orleans here. Of course, looking at I-610 at Canal Boulevard. And you can see the conditions here. I believe they're still very much showing the eye wall here, as you can see from this camera shaking.
Just dreadful driving conditions.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's pretty much the center of New Orleans, near City Park.
Yeah, and just a reference as well, we were talking about power outages earlier, an update just came in. Jefferson County has more than doubled the amount of customers it had without power. Before we were at 34,000, that's up to 84,000 now out of the 212,000 customers there. So they're at almost half their total customers without power. And Orleans County has 76,000 without power. That's up from 38,000 at the last update. And that's a little shy of 45% without power. Now statewide, there's 214,000 customers without power. That is indicative of around 10% of the entire state's customers without power. And just a reference for people watching, when you say customers, that refers to buildings or units. That doesn't refer to the number of people. Typically, a building or a household that's counted as a customer will have multiple people in it. So the actual number of people without power is substantially larger than that 214,000 number right now.
Do we think the new disturbance in the Atlantic will get named with waters cooling off now?
Well, they're certainly not cooling off significantly in the West Caribbean, and that's exactly where this is expected to form. Conditions in the area, not necessarily exactly where it's going to go, but in the West Caribbean as a whole, it's still supportive of a Category 5 at this time.
And a question
and
there
indeed,
about...
we've still had a Category 5 in the past, later on in the season.
On a few occasions. A question, or just a couple maybe. A question there about inland impacts. Do you want to discuss that?
Yep, we discussed those a bit earlier, but they still are quite relevant. I don't know if you can pull up the
relevant.
weather.gov website, or if anyone can pull it up to screen share. If not, I can. I'll actually do it right now.
Go ahead, Strat.
Other than just, directly on the shore, we're going to be seeing very substantial impact in association. Zoom in a little bit just to give a better shot here. So this is the weather.gov website, National Weather Service.
Is that tropical storm warning all the way up there?
Tropical storm warnings
Wow.
From Louisiana all the way to Virginia. So the inland risk, because the storm is moving so quickly, for tropical storm conditions, as it's still a tropical cyclone, extend from its current location through southeastern Mississippi, most of Alabama, northern Georgia, including Atlanta, northwestern South Carolina, the western about half of North Carolina, and very tippy portions of Tennessee, and then into southern Virginia. Those are all tropical storm warnings, and although the maximum rainfall expected is 4 to 6 inches in a smaller area along the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina, locally 2 to 4 inches as a maximum is possible throughout much of this region. And if that comes down pretty quickly, along the pace the storm is moving at, you could get some flash flooding and localized river flooding out of that still, alongside the damaging winds that would be expected with tropical storm conditions.
I'm just curious what that outline is in southern Illinois.
That was just
a
quick idea. That was because push to talk buttons. If you hold something and it clicks, it gives a special outline or something. I don't know.
Okay.
It happens. That wasn't actually anything anything for the map or whatsoever.
I was going to wonder because I've never seen that before. Okay.
Yeah. Furthermore, on top of those tropical storm warnings that go all the way to Virginia, these flash flood watches and warnings that go from northern Alabama all the way up to Pennsylvania and New Jersey are also in association with Zeta. So you have warnings with this system currently active in watches from its current location in New Orleans all the way to New Jersey.
Yeah, that's going to be a big rain event up there.
Yeah, and
Latest report of power outages is 215,000 customers in Louisiana.
And looking there, New Orleans getting further into the eye, it would appear at this point. I was just eyeing Isaac's imagery earlier from that same location. We'll come back to it soon, but just show us what you're looking at now. Is this on Lake Pontchartrain?
Oh, you're showing. I didn't. Are you showing my my camera?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I didn't. I was sorry. I was blanking out. This is just to the south of Slidell, Louisiana.
Oh, okay, right. So yes, they're getting into the. Well, no, the worst part is still yet to come for this location, but obviously you can already see it's getting fairly bad. But could
The
you
only camera
cycle?
up and running.
Could you cycle back to that other camera that we were watching for quite a while? Because no, the other one, because it looked like it was getting calmer there.
This is okay. This is it.
It does look a little bit calmer, and visibility is much higher. So safe to say that some of New Orleans is in the eye at this point.
By the looks of it.
Yeah, I mean, that means that where Nelson is right now, for example, in New Orleans, could see a period where, the conditions actually die down for a bit. You have lighter winds, if not almost nil, with some gusts, and the rainfall could let up for a bit. But especially because this storm is moving so quickly, anyone that's watching this that, for example, may have not lost power and still in the area should not take that as an excuse to, do anything leisurely or go out to an unprotected area whatsoever. Because this system's moving so quickly, the southern side will come in on you really quick, and you don't want to be caught off guard, because even though that side isn't as strong as the northern side is, it's still incredibly strong and can easily bring and will bring life-threatening conditions if you're caught outside during it.
Now, I assume the National Hurricane Center are still doing hourly updates, but I do not have 6 p.m. here.
Yeah, I don't have that out here either yet. I'm not sure what's up with that.
Yeah, I don't have them either.
Okay, well, that's a mystery. Do we think that Zeta was a Category 2 or a 3? We're already having that,
It's high-end category 2, if you
that
ask me.
discussion.
High-end cat 2.
High-end category 2. Category 2, excuse me.
I'm personally gonna stick with category 2 for now, unless I find, I see that there's enough evidence for it to warrant a category 3 upgrade, which is, I would say, a 50-50 chance in post-analysis that it's upgraded to major.
Plus, I think for people watching right now, I know there's always the talk of differences between, a tropical storm and a hurricane. There's a big difference in media coverage. A category 2 to
The update statement is out now. It's down to 105 miles per hour, pressure of 973 millibars, life-threatening surge, and the strong winds continue from Zeta over southeastern Louisiana. And that reminder again, don't venture outside when the calm eye of the hurricane passes over, as dangerous winds will return very quickly when the eye moves away. Considering this storm's movement at 25 miles per hour, it's going to be quicker than even usual. Stronger winds, especially in gusts, are likely on high-rise buildings. Obviously, a weather flow station in Harahan, Louisiana recently reported sustained winds of 56 miles per hour and a gust of 75. An elevated station at Bayou Bienvenue reported sustained winds of 88 miles per hour and a gust of 112. An unofficial weather station near Lake Hermitage reported sustained winds of 64 and a gust of 86. So we've had it appears that we've had the highest wind reports at this point, and the storm is now starting to gradually weaken. But
Would like to mention, I don't know if anybody brought it up, but Nelson shared an observation from his weather station there. Looks like, I'm assuming before it went down, of a pressure of 976.6 HPA or millibars.
I mean, that really shows, even though he's not directly in the center where the lowest pressure is right now, very powerful storm that even inland is only weakening right now at a pretty slow pace. That's going to pick up as it moves inland, but because the storm's moving so quickly, areas like New Orleans, of course, are getting those Category 2 force sustained winds right now. Into Mississippi, those Category 2 winds are still possible. And then you could still see hurricane conditions well inland as the storm weakens, potentially, depending on the rate of weakening, through a good portion of southern Mississippi and crossing over into Alabama. Once we get to, tomorrow, of course, it's going to be down to about 45 miles an hour. But because it's moving so quickly, that's why you have those tropical storm warnings so far inland.
Yep, as soon as we hear anything else from Nelson, who we believe still has power, although flickering, we'll let you know. But elsewhere...
We're hearing that the waters are starting to rise in the Mississippi now.
Ah, yes.
Also, a quick note to point out that currently the highest wind report that I've found is 88 miles an hour with a gust to 112 miles an hour, which has been reported at Bayou Bienvenue near New Orleans.
As we look back onto this webcam shot once again, and things looking somewhat calmer there, certainly in a part of the eye there in that location.
This camera right here is just, if I remember correctly, just to the southeast of downtown downtown New Orleans here. And you can see the current conditions now. Power looks to be back on now for the moment here, and you can see police in the distance there. Looks like patrolling the streets to make sure nobody's out and about right now.
Strap?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really just taking a look at the satellite appearance. The southern side's, of course, weaker than the north, but still dangerous. It's just the trick of the radar almost that we can't really see much that isn't on the southern half of the system right now. So, there's still very significant convection on the southern half, although weaker. One of the things that I'm considering while taking a look at this still, though, is that despite what we saw with Nelson having very high rainfall rates, I guess the fortunate thing in that part too, for people that are concerned about this, that either live in Louisiana or all the way up to the mid-Atlantic, that could see impacts, is that because it's moving so quickly, those rain rates aren't going to accumulate for very long in specific areas, so you're going to see less totals. I will note on the updated graphic that came out quite recently, there is a very small splotch in the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina that is expecting 6 to 10 inches of rainfall in association with Zeta. But the most expectations of additional rainfall from this point on is 4 to 6 inches in North Carolina over small portions of the Appalachian Mountains, the spines, fortunately more rural areas. But a wider area, generally of 2 to 4 inches of rainfall is expected from the storm's current location all the way out into Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and even clipping parts of Massachusetts as the system heads out to sea. Of course, the strongest winds are going to die down as we continue to move through. Those have already happened. We saw those happen live. But, the threat for damaging winds at or near gale force and the flash flooding risk extend inland. And I wanted to point out, something just because I know people are talking about this a lot. I know media coverage in general makes it so people think a major difference between a tropical storm and a Category 1, or difference between a hurricane and a major hurricane, or high-end Category 4 and Category 5. But for people asking, those questions, when you're looking at a storm that's 110 miles an hour and a Category 3 is 111 miles an hour, or a tropical storm is 70 and hurricane, it requires 74 miles an hour. There is a very, very marginal and minor difference between either of those two, changes, I guess, is the way to put it.
Nelson is back with us.
Nelson, how's things?
Hello, good evening. How are y'all?
Right.
Nelson's back with us. Just had to
Yeah,
go away
aye.
for a moment there. What's the situation, Nelson?
Well, we are currently in the eye. I am sticking close to my house. There are people out on the street. Neighbors around the corner have been congregating. It's dead calm right now with no precipitation. So a chance to look at some of the damage. Small palm fronds in my yard, that's not too bad. Have not had any branches off of that tree. I tried to show y'all this shed earlier, but that was really chaotic. It was absolutely ferocious for a while there. You could hear, as I said, construction materials, parts of buildings, trash cans even being thrown against other objects. But for right now, I have power, I have internet, and it's calm. So we at least get a little bit of a break.
That's remarkable. And certainly you can't see much out there. It's still very cloudy.
What's the pressure?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
What's the pressure reading that?
what's the pressure at my station?
Yeah.
I'll have to go inside and check that. I will be back with you on that.
Okay. Well, that's the view from New Orleans right now, inside the eye of Hurricane Zeta, where it is calm, at least
Calm.
for now.
Something that has been shared on Twitter is that there have been reports of buildings completely disintegrating in the hurricane force winds, and
Yeah, I've got a.
one image has finally managed to make its way onto Twitter, which Christian is sharing.
Let's see this. Wow.
That-
So, a
yeah.
building literally breaking up.
You've literally got the building right here, and then you've got the tweet going, whole structure just blew apart in Phoenix. So, Zeta
So
means
what's happened there is that the low pressure combined with the high winds has managed to break the bolts holding the roof on, and it's just blown up in the air. And as the roof's gone up, the walls have collapsed inwards, because in many structures the roof is the main support for the walls.
Yes.
And
Therefore,
just
you've
to
seen a
follow
total
up,
collapse.
sorry, just to follow up, the pressure is 974.6 millibars where I am right now.
wow, 974.
That's pretty impressive.
That's very impressive.
Does it potentially lend more evidence that maybe it was in the 960s when it made landfall? Okay.
Well, I think that it certainly was below 970, given that reading of 969.5 earlier near the coast.
Just look how calm it is there.
And just keep it going until
This is the eye of a
backside is
Category
going to
2
come in very
hurricane.
quickly.
This is the eye of a Category 2 hurricane you're looking at here. It's, of course, clouded
Potentially
over right
Category
now.
3, actually, I think.
Well,
Well, it's a Category 2 now.
that's up for debate in another day.
Well,
Indeed.
you could, even though the eye is cloudy there, you get to see how calm it is. Just, it gives people a false sense of security. You could only imagine how it was, before we had Recon, before we had satellite and radar data.
Especially
have
those
been
cloudy eyes, because you don't know where the other side is.
Exactly. We're really fortunate right now to have, at least in this part of the world, to have Recon, radar, satellite data, all that, and even ground observations like, what Nelson is showing us right now, nowadays here. It's really incredible here, and I really applaud Nelson for showing us how it is down there, giving like a first-hand experience of what it's like for people who may be in the path of it still that want to know what it's like in the storm.
Yeah. Again, I've got another image up on screen share as well that has been shared with us by David.
Well, just a moment on that.
Alright.
Here's another image, yes. So that's quite self-explanatory, but
So yeah,
All
it's
snapped.
it's the whole power pole has completely snapped.
wow.
And yeah, it's incredible, really.
So that's another one they're going to have to fix there.
I believe we may have a tornado warning at this time.
Let's zoom out and see if we have a tornado warning. It hasn't appeared on my screen just yet.
In
That's not to say
Mississippi.
there isn't one, but well, it must be over there somewhere. Do you have any more details?
Near the Mississippi-Alabama border.
Yeah, that's not too much of a surprise to see. It's possibly this area here, not having looked at the map just yet, but
Observed tornado threat, pea-sized hail possible, rural area, no major population sensors, valid until 6:45 CDT.
This looks like a nice sunset there. Nelson.
Yeah, you can, just to my west, you can actually almost see sunlight through the clouds. It's, that's certainly not clear, but it is a definite golden hue coming through the clouds to the west.
that's so surreal.
Wow.
That is really weird. Wow.
It's incredible. I'm even seeing just quickly looking at some of the cameras, and I'm even seeing birds flying around now in the eye of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, there have been some. In that tree over there, you of course can't see it, but there are a couple squirrels out playing around on the branches. Yeah, it's a very surreal feeling. It's getting lighter and lighter right now. And so there is this golden pink hue over everything, and it does make it very surreal.
This is typically what you'd see behind a line of severe thunderstorms after they pass through. Definitely a common sight in the Midwest here and in the South in many cases, but yeah, like that. Seeing that being in the eye of a storm, even though it's not totally clear, is definitely surreal to look at. So it's very interesting that we're all seeing this live.
And Nelson, if you're,
I will now tell you that the rain is starting to pick up again, very slowly,
Yeah,
but
I
I
can
am
see it on the
feeling
trees.
raindrops.
Oh boy.
See
And
maybe a couple of
before
minutes
it-
from the backside of it.
before we have to go here, Nelson, with the second part of the eye wall coming in, what would you estimate just to give like a rough estimate here on what you think the winds peaked out at your location, if you are able to?
Well, again, what you would have felt on the ground wouldn't be a full force of the winds, but I would say at tree level, easily peaking at 80 mile an hour gusting. I can't say for sure because once you get to that level, it's very hard to estimate. So I would say gusts probably at least 80 to 85 miles per hour, just based on the way the trees were moving, what came out of them, and the damage it's done to the shed, the weather station. I don't see any tiles from the... That's good news because it's a very old house and is prone to leaking anyway. So,
Just want to point out this tornado warning observed south of Columbus, Mississippi. So that's where it is. Just had to break in there to deliver that news as well. So the tornado threat will continue throughout the whole evening, you would imagine, but Nelson's not had any of that. He's only had a Category 2 hurricane wind instead.
I mean, well, that's fortunate to say the least. It definitely wouldn't be good for the areas that are already getting hit by Category 2 winds to get direct tornado activity on top of
Yeah,
course, tornado activity where it's going on right now looks to be potentially preceding some of those stronger winds that are going to come in later today as the storm rapidly moves that way. Actually, it's a bit out of range, actually, fortunately, for those areas. It's just the north of where some of the tropical storm warnings are, but still very dangerous nonetheless.
Isaac, really bad at your location there.
Well, on this live camera here, you can see they're starting to get into the outer eye wall here, or actually I should say inner eye wall, because they're a little bit south of the city of Slidell is where this camera is located here. I saw somebody on the road earlier there that was, I guess, trying to contemplate whether or not they wanted to cross the road or just stay put, but they appear to have moved on here, and you can see the camera really shaking here. As the inner eye wall goes over this camera location. Again, this camera is located just south of the city of Slidell, Louisiana.
So that's another, and about 10 minutes ago when we were looking at this imagery, I just saw a large truck go along that bridge. Does that driver even know that they're driving a high-sided vehicle across a bridge over water in a Category 2 hurricane? I don't even know anymore. But we will be finishing up our coverage shortly on this, which has been a very remarkable storm and development in the last few hours. We do have a 24/7 stream that runs all the time, and we'll have the latest satellite imagery on this and all the other storms that are active. If you're watching on our live link, youtube.com/force13/live, it should go back to that, shouldn't it, Strat? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so this stream, when it's live, has the main live link. But when this goes offline, if you were to not click the top link in this description and go to that stream directly, eventually, if you were just to refresh the page, give it 5-10 minutes, you get that stream back on this link.
Yeah, okay, so that's that. Also, our US team are also running a live event on there with the latest imagery of the storm as well. So there's plenty of places to go and take a look at the latest developments. But from our team, any final comment regarding this storm? Obviously, the fact that we're going off the air shortly doesn't mean that the threat of this storm has diminished very much. It's still very much there.
No.
But go ahead.
The worst of the surge, at least in particular for Mississippi, is still yet to get there. So it is. So, keep preparations, hunker down, especially, and keep away from the water. If you were told to evacuate, then evacuate.
Yeah, I'd implore everyone that, especially in Louisiana right now and southern Mississippi and Alabama, that, the time for, additional new evacuation preparation is probably over. So please make sure you're doing everything you can to stay as safe as possible. This isn't the end of the storm by any means, even though the maximum winds are going to start to decrease. And even further up into other portions of the southeast and getting into the mid-Atlantic, you guys are going to get impact from this too in the coming days. So make sure you're staying up to date with the latest information for your areas and on the storm in general, as the threat from this system is still very large.
Tornado warning just east of Pensacola right now.
And stuff like that too. You don't need to be in the direct path of the storm under any areas that are expecting significant rainfall from the storm, or be under a tropical storm warning or flood watch to end up getting adverse conditions. So please make sure you're staying up to date with information on your location to stay safe.
Eastern side of the storm, northern side there, both susceptible to tornado potential and water spouts as well. There's blue areas there. Those are like tornado warnings, but for water spouts. Out at sea, so there's large chunks that are heading in towards the coastal areas of Alabama and even Florida, of course, into Mississippi as well. So that's something to watch out for, clearly.
We've seen further reports of building collapses in the New Orleans metro area now.
Wow. Not good news.
And radar velocities are showing that there are multiple or likely water spouts over the water at this time.
Oh gosh. Not good news, definitely not. But we're just about finishing up here. We've sort of run out of what we can do to be of help to as from a broadcasting perspective. We do a lot of discussion about what's to come rather than what's happening, but nonetheless, we've seen from the ground and firsthand what's been going on with Hurricane Zeta. You can, of course, go ahead.
I believe Nelson's back.
Nelson?
I do apologize for coming in and out, but you can actually see some sunlight over to the west that way, and then coming across nearly blue skies.
Wow.
And
Wow.
show the sunset again.
All right, I will bring you back that way.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that's what you can see. I do apologize that I run in and out, but
Oh, no.
power does flicker, which causes problems with connectivity. And every once in a while, even though you're 36 years old, Mom calls when you're in the eye of the hurricane and needs to know you're okay. So that's the reason I had to break away last time.
Oh, wow. Well, nice to see that you've got the priorities right there, Nelson. Mother definitely comes first.
Yes,
100%.
absolutely.
But and I don't know if you can see it, that light over there is now just becoming obscured by more and more low clouds pushing from north to south, roughly. And so I think that we are going to be losing that golden spot fairly soon. But until then, I've got to be thankful. I know it's worse for many other people. I've been watching the news because, still having power, still having access to over-the-air television. I know it's worse for other people, but right now I'm very thankful. I haven't seen many reports of street flooding in metropolitan New Orleans, in the city itself. So, there will be wind and water damage, of course, but no major flooding concerns at the moment.
Well, that's a relief to hear for that particular area. But storm surge threat still continues for the coast of Mississippi. It's removed from the coast of Louisiana now at this point, as we saw earlier from Grand Isle. But the Mississippi coast is going to be in for it just now, with the storm not too far away from making that second landfall, which will probably happen in the next 30 minutes or so. But we are finishing up here from here. Oh my goodness. Well, that happened very abruptly. We're finishing up here at 413 HQ. This was our live coverage on Hurricane Zeta as it made landfall in Louisiana in real time. A Category 2 high end with winds of 110 miles per hour. Could have been a Category 3. We'll find out probably next year at some point when the National Hurricane Center do reanalysis. But there we go. You can continue the conversation on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13. There's plenty of people there to chat about the latest in terms of hurricanes and general weather wherever you are around the world. And we'll have more updates on this on our social platforms on Facebook and Twitter, and we will also be producing more videos on our YouTube channel with regard to this and the Western Pacific systems which are brewing over there as well. But for myself and the team, and Nelson there, who's been braving that hurricane very well indeed, not just in aid of our coverage, but certainly to ensure that he remains safe during that whole scenario. And you've got part 2 still coming up over there. Our thanks go out to him and to the rest of the team who have provided this coverage over the last nearly 4 hours. That's it from here. We'll see you again soon, probably when the next hurricane strikes Louisiana at this rate. This has been the 5th one or something like that. Ridiculous year for this part of the coast. Let's hope they can get a big break after this one. Good night.